The protagonist snapped back to reality, swearing it felt like he was trapped in some twisted game right there in his room. His name was Suzumiya, and once upon a time he was 21, staring around as dense forest closed in on him, completely clueless about where he even was. Mazerd Online wasn't just a game, it swallowed gamers whole, and Suzumiya, fresh out of college, dumped every second of his life into it. After 3 straight days and nights of non-stop grinding, his headaches cranked up hard, and when the whole party huddled together, the item they needed just wouldn't drop, so he kept going, sleepless, and then, out of nowhere, he felt lighter. When Suzumiya finally snapped awake, he blinked into this strange, mysterious place, and there he was in his everyday clothes, totally out of his element, feeling lighter than air, like something had stolen the weight from his body. He let out a shaky sigh of relief, telling himself it had to be a nightmare that only his mind cooked up, because 4 nights without sleep was brutal even for him. Maybe he'd just finally crashed. And when he came back to reality, he'd have to race to his guildmates and apologize. Suddenly, the hero spotted strange beasts tearing into something, and locking eyes with him like they knew exactly what he was. 6-legged dogs with mean eyes charged at him, then jumped forward and rushed him, barking like they wanted him gone. But the truth is, they didn't attack Suzumiya at all. The 6-legged dogs tore past him. The hero was dead sure he had to be a gamer through and through, because even in his sleep, game creatures were invading his dreams. If he tried to describe this whole mess with a metaphor, it'd be an impossible glitch in real life. Suddenly, a black window flashed right in front of Suzumiya, carved with the characters he knew from before. He jerked back in surprise, then his eyes locked on it like he recognized the plate instantly. A status window of all things appeared here, and he couldn't shake the feeling it was because he'd just said status. The hero's eyes narrowed as he leaned in and scrutinized the sign inch by inch. When Suzumiya locked eyes on him, she immediately noticed his MP was way too high compared to everyone else. He couldn't stop wondering what the average MP magic points was in this world, and that window made it crystal clear. Whenever his points dipped below the max, they snapped back by 10% every single minute. Most people in this world start with only 10 magic points, but Suzumiya looked at that number and thought, no way, I'm meant to be something special. But honestly, it didn't even matter, because every single thing that happened was nothing but a dream. Then the window flashed more than just clues. It revealed Suzumiya was an alien, and somehow he had real talent in magic, martial arts, and more. So yeah, he was an alien with a rank 10, and his powers didn't come out of nowhere. They depended on how high his rank had been back in the previous world, shaping everything, even his talent for magic. The hero couldn't figure out which world he'd stumbled into. Was he dreaming or awake? But every detail felt way too real. 6-legged dogs burst out of the forest again, 3 of them this time, and they charged straight for that same clearing where Suzumiya was. One of the dogs growled, and the hero instantly went, whoa, this feels so real, just like these dogs. So it all clicked, he had to bolt right now and get off that spot, because even in a dream, scary stuff is still terrifying. He sprinted so hard it shocked even him, way faster than usual, and he couldn't help wondering if it was that alien skill pushing him. Suzumiya snapped to it fast. Those green dogs were every bit as fast as he was, and none of them fell behind. As he sprinted for his life, panic hit hard and he kept thinking, what the hell is going on with these dogs? At last, he scrambled up a tree, dropped into a forked branch, and stayed just out of reach of the dogs. Suzumiya burst into a grin as he stared at the dog, smugly thinking it was thrilled with his newly sharpened jumping power. But he couldn't stay stuck here forever. The hero had to figure out how to break free from this forest, so he snapped back to the abilities window, hunting for skills that might finally save him. Among his abilities was analysis. He could size up anything in his sight, like an instant evaluator, and Suzumiya figured that meant he'd finally be able to spot details about the creatures. Right here, the hero clicks. If he can cast the skill without direct contact, then there's nothing stopping him from using it right now. When Suzumiya unleashed that skill on the dog, a glowing window ripped open in midair, flashing the power of the move and the animal's strength points. This monster was only F rank, but the hero had no clue just how dangerous that could be, because this dog was dumb as a brick yet packed raw, brutal strength, and he wanted nothing to do with a fight. Suzumiya decided to dig into what other tricks he had, and boom, turns out his magic talent let him learn spells way faster than anyone else, supercharging his fire magic while stacking even more power into his swordmaster skills. But he still had no clue how magic worked, and his hands were empty, with 0 weapons to fight back. Suzumiya got this wild idea, reached toward the system window, and first tried to pull up the inventory, then he went straight for an item. On his second try, things finally clicked right around the hero. Something started to show up. He flicked his eyes to the system window, numbers snapped into place, a bold 0 staring back beside 1012, and not a single clue why. Suzumiya couldn't stop smiling like he already had the answer. He thought, I've got something, but then the real question hit him. What does this number even mean? And the twist. It's the very top of how many magic points he can ever hold. If 1012 is the max inventory he can carry, then he's got nothing left, and just like his status screen, there might be hidden commands he hasn't even unlocked yet. So if you want magic, you've got to cast spells, like Suzumiya did when he aimed his hand at the dog and tried to summon a roaring fireball. It didn't work, so the hero barked that the flame should burst straight from his hands, and right away, fire flared across his palm. Healing should be, the young man realized he might have to picture a spell in his mind before he could use magic. He crouched in the tree's fork, wrapped his arms around the trunk, and convinced himself nothing could stop him from trying. Suzumiya decided to picture a fireball burning in his own hand, and then cranked it even bigger than the last one. The hero suddenly realized this had hooked him, because once you've seen what you can do, it'd be plain foolish not to enjoy it. He just had to picture a fireball in his own hand, then launch it straight at the green wolf, so he did, and boom, that's exactly what happened. A fireball crashed into the wolf's side, slammed him to the ground, and flames immediately swallowed him whole. Suzumiya climbed down from the tree and grinned. He'd actually pulled it off, then clenched his fists with pure joy. The hero blurted, "This is amazing," and for a moment it felt like music was ringing in his ears, until something suddenly snagged his focus. The system window snapped back in front of the boy, and he instantly knew that was the sound of leveling up. His max magic points surged by 500, and his fire magic jumped by 1. Suddenly he snapped his focus back to the green wolf. Suzumiya cried out that the fire was still raging and spreading. Even the flames snapped and scorched him, and the hero jolted his head left and right, frantically hunting for the river. Then it hit him, magic was real, and he immediately started picturing how water could burst out of a fire hose. Water suddenly blasted from Suzumiya's hands, dousing that raging wolf, and the water magic column climbed up with a crisp new one. The hero couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was slipping out of him happened because he'd burned through magic points, even if he wasn't at full capacity. Then it hit him. His magic felt cheap and weak. The young man snapped to it. He had to check his inventory right now, and when he did, only 2 items sat there, a wolf and a plant. Suzumiya dropped to the ground, sat up straight, chuckled, and swore this all felt so real it couldn't possibly be a dream. He's read all those stories where the hero gets ripped into another world, and now it feels like Suzumiya is living that exact nightmare. His parents died in a car crash 2 years back, loneliness swallowed him whole, and even the people who played his favorite game walked away. The hero doubled over with his hands on his knees, staring at the ground, realizing he'd landed in another world, but he had zero clue how to get back. If he can't go back, then he'll throw himself into life here, laugh, explore, live it up, while Suzumiya leans in and tells him she's praying this world won't turn dull or gloomy. Suddenly a blood-curdling scream tore through the air, so the hero shot upright, sprinted toward the sound, and prayed someone was still there. He nearly choked on shock when he finally stumbled into the screaming crowd, and there it was, the 6-legged dogs that slammed into the caravan. 2 men slammed back the dogs with a spear and a sword, and the beasts snarled and barked at them, still refusing to back down. Suzumiya stared at the scene and finally clocked it. Those weren't normal dogs, they were green ones, and the young man decided right then he had to step in and help these people. He knew straight away at that range water magic was useless, and if he fired off fire magic, the cart would instantly go up in flames. Suzumiya realized there was nothing he could change, so he clenched his resolve. Sure, it would be his first time doing this, but he had to try. The hero dropped into a crouch, pressed his palm to the ground, and decided he had to start by picturing a spear tip. He jolted upright and wildly waved his hand to fire off the magic. Yep, the spearhead driving into that wolf with the stone piercing through was exactly the answer, and Suzumiya sealed it with earth magic. The stone spear slammed into the wolf's side, sending him crashing to the ground. Then the weapon shattered into dust, and the hero panicked, fearing it might have been broken for good. Still, somehow those green dogs snapped out of their confusion and paused mid-attack for a heartbeat, and that young man felt relief flood in, because he'd finally bought himself some time. This gave the men by the wagon the perfect chance. Then one of them thrust his spear straight through the wolf. Suzumiya couldn't contain her joy. Then a green wolf snarled, and one of the men shouted that the last giant wolf was still out there, so they'd have to strike it as a team. The attackers surged in pairs. One kept stabbing with a spear, while the other lunged in with a sword. With one final strike, they took down the last wolf, no turning back from there, and the green dog crumpled, beaten for good. They dropped down to rest, grinning because they'd won and finally felt safe. then Suzumiya showed up in the clearing right beside them. Suzumiya couldn't believe it. One of the men said the hero had saved them, and now they were pouring out thanks, but then he added that the boy looked like he'd stumbled out of the forest and didn't seem like any adventure at all, so why was he even there? The hero said that when he woke up, he was already deep in the forest, with barely any memory of how he got there, so he figured a tale like that fit perfectly. One of the men guessed it was monsters that jumped him, yet he looked totally fine, but Suzumiya shut that down fast, then shouted for a guy named Karek-san. A blond man with a mustache burst out of the carriage and faced Suzumiya, demanding whether he'd saved their caravan, then thanking him like his life depended on it. He introduced himself as Karek, a merchant. When Suzumiya introduced himself, the man's face cracked with shock, so he demanded, "Say it again." And the second time, the boy tossed out a new name, Kaide. The merchant promised, "If you've got amnesia, I'll help," then added, "If Suzumiya's got the cash, I can prove who you are," but the hero had no money. Then Carrot guessed the hero had dropped everything in the forest, and he snapped that without an ID card there was no way into the city. So he shoved a bag of money into the young man's hands, calling it both a deposit and a guild contribution. When Suzumiya peered into the bag, his eyes widened. It's packed to the brim with shiny silver coins. The young man asked if those were silver coins, and the merchant practically scoffed, because that was what Suzumiya meant at all, and then it hit hard. The kid had completely forgotten about the local currency. Then the carriage door swung open, and out stepped a blonde girl in a black and white dress, asking him straight up, "Are you Kidi-san?" The girl grinned and introduced herself as Sally. She ran the guild for the city of Ain, and then she laughed, "Just call me Sally." The receptionist flat out refused to abandon Suzumiya and offered to take him with her. Meanwhile, the merchant didn't bat an eye. Right as the young man climbed into the cart, Sally snapped into action and spilled the whole story from the very start, until she pointed out they were on a forest road near Ain. With how her story turned out, they were now creeping toward the forest south of Ain, and that's exactly where monsters love to show up, so Sally and the merchant packed bodyguards. Suzumiya dug into how money worked here, and found out iron coins were basically worthless, while silver climbed up, gold hit the sweet spot, and large gold, that stuff was the real heavy hitter. Sally spilled everything to him, and once it all clicked, she decided she was done. Suzumiya turned to the girl and thanked her. Then, right out of nowhere, something crashed down beside him. The hero stared at the cart loaded with way too much stuff and thought, why do they need all of this? After all, inventory already exists in this world, so he turned to the male merchant and demanded an answer. He told them this ability only works for folks blessed with real magic talent, because time freezes inside the inventory, making it perfect for merchants, while mages stay top-tier adventurers, so they don't come cheap. Suzumiya snapped back to that analysis skill trick, how it could disguise his real abilities and keep his secrets under wraps, so he decided to mask his rare skills and make sure they didn't stand out. At last, the cart finally rolled up to a towering gate, and the sign above it blared in huge letters. This was the city of Ain. The guard who met them clanked in full armor, spear in hand, and after a massive yawn he demanded, "Show me your ID." Kaide froze and Sally rushed in, explaining that he didn't have an ID. Then the guard blinked in shock and told them, "No problem. Hand over 1 silver coin as collateral and I'll give you something to touch." A giant metal plate sat there like a warning sign, and Sally swore it's a magical device that judges whoever touches it, so bandits can't sneak into the city. The girl promised the cash would be refunded the moment they showed the guild card. No big deal, because Carrick-san had already paid the guild registration fee himself. Suzumiya thanked Sally and the thought hit her, she had to be an amazingly kind person. The moment the young man touched that magical object, it flashed everything about him. His name, age, race, gender, magic level, and even proof that he had no criminal record. He stared at the book, asked if it was any good, and figured he could tear through it all. Maybe it was that otherworld language skill of his doing the heavy lifting. On top of that, the hero was convinced he could talk to Sally without a hitch, like some perfect translation was happening back and forth. Even the guard backed him up, saying he'd seen 0 issues. Suddenly something hit him like a shockwave. He shot up, apologized for being rude, and blurted that the young man's last name had been mentioned. Even Sally couldn't believe it. Then the guard stepped in and declared that this young man had noble blood running through his veins. Suzumiya realized people were probably mistaking him for a noble just because of his family name. Now that it was brought up, he couldn't stop thinking, did Carricksag and Sally's son only give their first names when they introduced themselves, or was that the whole deal, with a last name reserved for nobility alone? Once he slipped into the system window, he pulled up Salia and keyed Sand's skills in full data. Suzumiya finally clocked it, just like he figured. The two of them didn't even have a last name, and the girl pushed him to check his status. She didn't spot a single thing strange, just a name on the page. Then the guard stared at it again, and this time there wasn't even a last name. The guard threw an apology at his mistake and greeted the young man again, but the kid just laughed, so Suzumiya figured he wasn't covering up his last name at all with some kind of analysis skill. The young man knew one wrong move would get him in trouble, so he had to be super careful with every detail he shared. At last they slammed into the Adventurers Guild, well, its branch right in the city of Ain. Suzumiya stood behind the reception desk, and the girl at the front was seconds away from repeating herself all over again. It was Sally. She pulled him in, thanked him again for his help, then told him the moment he registered as an adventurer, he'd get a guild card he could use to take guild quests instead of showing an ID. The hero figured he had to earn his keep just to survive in this world, so he forked over the registration fee until Sally snapped, touched the box, and it hit with the exact same evaluation power as the gate. The moment Suzumiya's fingers brushed the box, he jolted. Inside was even more detailed intel. The girl only grinned, then thanked him like it was all part of the plan. Suddenly her face lit up with shock. Then the hero asked if she was okay, and she insisted nothing had happened at all. With a shaky stutter, Sally promised she'd finally break down how the guild worked, and she insisted it mattered a ton, so everyone better lean in and listen close. The girl shoved a guild card into his hands and told him what it all meant. Name, race, and gender stamped from top to bottom, with rank sitting right under it, G at the bottom, S at the top. Suzumi was sitting all the way at G. Sally told him the guild decides his rank rise based on how many quests he clears, and once he's starting at rank D, he still has to smash the guild test to earn that next upgrade. The girl said the third line on that card would reveal his criminal record, and the only word that's allowed there is bandit, the label they slap on anyone who dares to break the law. Sally said the fourth line lays out the history of finished quests, and the fifth line tracks the monsters you've wiped out, because the moment a quest ends, it pops right onto the map. If the hero beats the bandit, he'll get stamped into the record of defeated monsters, like permanently, and Sally even warned him, win that duel and you still won't turn into a bandit yourself. Watching bandits get treated like monsters totally blew Suzumiya's mind. With her hand pressed to her chest, the girl declared it was time to find out, because a guild card can't be forged, so if hers looked fake, someone had to prove it. She warned him that if the hero forged even a single one, the executioner would swing for him. Then Suzumiya's courage instantly crumpled in fear. So Sally wrapped up the guild card explanation and fired back, "That's everything, any more questions?" And when nobody spoke up, she just went, "Cool." So just like that, he's an adventurer now, right as the girl tells him she wants Kaya Dasen to never forget his duties as a guild member. He makes that promise, grins with gratitude, and thanks her for explaining it all. Right after he left, another guild worker from this branch slid up to Sally and studied her like he was searching for something. She told Sally that nobody ever called the girl Sally, and that it looked like she'd finally snagged a real man. Then Sally shot back, "All right, now get me back to work." But yeah, she was dead serious. Sally truly thought she'd finally found the one, and he felt like he'd stepped out of some other world. And on top of that, he could wield magic and martial arts in ways she'd never seen, pure talent, blowing her mind. But deep down, she swore her gut was screaming the truth. Keed-san was her destiny, because while the other girls tried to pull her into their world, she was already drifting somewhere else, lost in thoughts of him. When night swallowed the city, Suzumiya checked into the inn the gate soldier had pointed out, climbed into bed, and finally crashed. Turns out, the room was a steal for the price. After mulling it over, he yanked open the system window, and there it was, not just a green wolf in the inventory, but also a mysterious herb he'd never seen before. The hero never hesitated when he jumped in to help the bodyguards in the fight, and even though it all went his way, the danger still felt like it could have ended him in an instant. Suzumiya looked at what he'd just done and realized it was pure recklessness, so from now on he had to stay sharp. This world had bandits and worse, duels, so the real question hit hard: could he even survive it? This morning, the hero stepped outside and stretched like he meant it. Then the street hit him with that mouth-watering smell, and his stomach growled because he hadn't eaten since he arrived. Suzumiya sniffed out the source and rushed into the room, only to find friendly workers waiting there. The room was packed with gorgeous girls in fancy dress, and the instant they spotted Suzumiya, they all spun toward him and announced, "You're our first customer today." Suzumiya froze because these weren't just girls, they were elven maids. He practically burst with excitement and demanded a menu or something like it, and the girls just laughed back, "It's right on the table," then assured him that everything on it was mouthwatering. Suzumiya gripped the menu so tight his hands shook, scanning the room like, are these really elves? Or did he stumble into something else? Then he realized the old world never had anything like this, so his fears melted away. He scanned the girls around him and just knew this world was about to blow him away. After that meal, the hero swore it was pure perfection. Then the clock struck, and it was time to head to the guild and grab a couple of quests. Suzumiya realized that if he wanted to push past the city limits, he'd have to grab the gear first, because the money he'd received wouldn't stretch for long. Later, in some quiet courtyard, he slumped with his hands on his knees, defeated, muttering that he was completely lost. Suzumiya felt like he'd stumbled into a dead, forgotten nightmare, dark, creepy corners everywhere, and he knew he couldn't just guess his way out. He'd have to ask around fast to find a way to escape. The young man rapped on the next door, shoved it open, stepped in, and immediately blurted out, "Sorry, I didn't mean to intrude." He begged, "Can you help me get out of here?" The bearded man by the door snapped, "Who told you about this place?" And the young man jolted back, fear punching through him. Staring at the guy, the hero figured he had to be huge, maybe even a dwarf, and when he asked about the place, the man snapped back that nobody warned him either. He just wanted directions. The man shot back, "This is a gun store," then warned him that if the young guy wasn't into weapons, he'd better walk out. Suzume figured this guy was ice cold and unfriendly, but the moment weapons came up, his interest lit up fast. The hero said he was only weighing a new weapon, then the man lined in and asked, "So what's your budget?" Suzume shot back that he had 13,000 towels, and he wasn't done, he planned to rack up more. The man scoffed that with money like that he still couldn't even buy a knife, but once he watched the boy move, his eyes lit up as he realized this kid had real magic in his hands. The young man stared in shock. Could this guy really read him that fast, just by watching his every move? He said that when he woke up in the forest, he was broke and had no memory at all. Then the man cut him off cold, saying the boy's troubles didn't matter to him, and the crazy part was this: surviving in that forest somehow forged him into something stronger. The merchant told Suzumi this one-handed sword and shield could fit him perfectly, and if he wanted them, he'd have to cough up 15,000, but only if he promised to keep this place a total secret. He said the only thing stopping him from kicking the boy out on the spot was this: he spotted real sword destiny in him, the kind that could make him a swordsman someday. Suzumiya told himself he was being considerate even if he came off rude, and maybe that was just how dwarves were. He promised he'd be back once he had enough money, but halfway through the trip he got forced to turn around, and he still had no idea how to find his way. Eventually he finally busted back to the guild, only to get graded by a bunch of girls hauling towering stacks of books all over the place. The hero asks Sally for a couple of quests, and she eagerly promises to deliver them. Then she snaps and calls him over, daring him to follow. "She told me to grab the quest, just pull the request off the task board and bring it straight to me." She told him to grab only what matched his rank. Suzumi's was E, so he could stick to simple herb runs or take the work of a laborer or a loader, and Roy chose to gather herbs. Sally snapped that he had to hunt down the rare Zanana herb, an anti-hemorrhagic cure, and it was sold for just 30 apiece. Suzumiya couldn't believe how cheap that sounded. Sally shot back that Zanana grass isn't rare at all, it's the most common stuff around, but it grows in scattered patches, and the grass that surrounds it is poisonous, which makes gathering it a nightmare. Sally said it's cheap because most folks just stumble on herbs by accident. Then Suzumi blurted out, "How in the world do you even find herbs by accident?" Suddenly he remembered that mysterious herb sitting in his inventory and thrust it into the girl's hands. Sally froze, then confirmed it was exactly what the Zanana herb looks like. The hero realized the girl he'd met was the one who'd been growing up in that forest where he was dropped, and the moment he heard it, he understood. If he didn't push deeper, the monsters wouldn't hit him like they should. He thanked her for the clue, then grinned and said he already knew exactly where to find her. After a while, exhaustion crushed him, and he snapped that he couldn't find the herb anywhere. In despair, the hero realized he'd never planned for the fact that grass was everywhere, and that every blade he grabbed was poisonous. He figured he could handle it if it hit hard enough, but the so-called grass only tore up his stomach and filled him with pain. And yeah, Suzumiya couldn't even use his analysis skill, so he stared at the chaos and thought, how am I supposed to spot Zanana grass hiding in the bee's plants? He shut his eyes and blurted that maybe he had some kind of radar in him, something that could zero in on the perfect plant. No matter how hard he pushed, the young man couldn't make a damn thing happen. He knew it was wrong, then out of nowhere something clicked nearby. He snapped his eyes up and froze at a triangle hanging in the sky. Suzumiya said she had no clue what that sign even meant. He closed in and spotted Zuna grass sprouting underneath it, and the young man's eyes lit up. If the grass was there, he could track it down. When he glanced around, he spotted a bunch of triangles jutting straight down toward the grass. Soon he dumped a huge pile of that grass right in front of Sally, and her eyes went wide, same for all the other workers. The girl claimed he'd gathered a ton, then asked if he really tossed it together with poisonous grass, but Suzumiya shot back, honest as ever, "No way, I just used my skills." He added that he'd met the request. Each stem was over 15 centimeters, and that meant the grass was blasting into the world way too fast. Sally begged him to hold up for 1 minute, then dove into the grass and started checking everything fast. At the end, the girl blurted out in shock that it seriously looked like it was all zoning grass. Then she demanded to know how he managed to grab 203 pieces, and what he actually meant when he said it was his skills. The hero suddenly remembered she tested him and this skill wasn't there, and his words tripped out in a panic as he blurted that he'd relied on instincts to judge the herb. Sally leaned in, grinning like she couldn't believe it, swearing she clearly heard him say the exact thing about the evaluation skill. Then Suzumiya snapped, "Calm down." He had to swallow his pride and admit it was real. He just couldn't see it in the status window, which was exactly why he'd hoarded so many. Sally blurted out an apology, stunned to the core. She'd never seen skills that didn't show up on the status window before. Suzumiya let out a breath of relief, thinking it was finally close. He tipped his thanks to the girl and stormed off while she waved back, still totally spooked by how mysterious it all felt. Soon Suzumiya was back at that yard. He pounded on the door, walked inside, and announced he'd come to buy a shield. He blared a loud shout for attention, and the man snapped, "Shut up, come in, then just wait." As the hero scanned the area, a sign caught his eye, Doverage, Nambarash, written plain as day. While he focused on his work, he gripped the hot metal with tongs and plunged it into icy water. The steel he dropped into the water started hissing and steaming like it had just met fire, so the hero snapped in surprise. Then the man shot upright and declared, "I finally finished it." He spun toward the young man and demanded, "Got any money?" The kid shot back that he had just enough for a shield, and even better, he could cast magic, so that shield would be his key to leveling up fast. The dwarf blurted in shock, "Wait, so I can use magic," because if he truly mastered it, his skill would forge him into a swordsman, but if not, he'd lose his hands and end up with a staff instead. He boasted that magic was his real gift. Then the hero shot back, asking if he should raise that staff. The man shot back that he'd never seen talent like this, because even without a staff, the kid could still sling magic, and still, keeping focus long enough to land it was a brutal challenge. The dwarf bragged that magic could be deadly even without a staff, yet it was worthless if he couldn't land the hit, and the hero countered, thinking the staff was what made casting come faster. He realized his magic speed could smash the target without needing the staff, but if she cranked it even higher with that staff, then he'd have to power up even more. Suzumiya figured he'd have to grab a staff later. Then a man cut in, warning him not to loosen his guard, claiming he'd seen too many gifted people get killed by nothing more than careless mistakes. He swore this guy was genuinely kind, and Dovrash stepped forward like, "Here, take the shield and try holding it." But this one was just too heavy, so the man grabbed another, and Suzumiya shot back that this one was perfect, convinced Davrog was just sitting there, watching everything like he understood it all. At last, they unearthed a shield that fit Suzumiya perfectly. He lit up and said it suited him so well, it looked made for him. When he lifted it, the armor felt like it had fused to his own body and that dwarf. Man, he was the real deal, a master through and through. But something urgent had to be said, and the hero stepped up to the dwarf with the sword, asking what special requests he wanted. The hero just wanted to ask if the man could temper the sword, and he was dying to learn how it's made. That simple curiosity hit the dwarf like a shock. He said the blade should be heated right after the strike, then cooled in a flash, and just like that, Suzumiya latched onto the idea exactly. Still, the sword's shape looked warped, like it couldn't take a hit. The dwarf figured it was brittle, then flicked his finger against the blade to test it. He was absolutely stunned. The sword felt brutal in his hand, and the man practically bragged, calling it straight-up mind-blowing. The dwarf said he finally got how it worked. Those distortions could vanish if the sword was softened just right, but then he warned, grim as steel. It was so hard it could snap at any moment. The hero pitched a fix, heat the blade at a lower burn, then cool it slow so it might soften, but he admitted he couldn't guess the exact temperature. The dwarf snapped back that he got it all, every last bit, and then admitted he had no clue where the young man picked it up, but man, it sounded totally fascinating. He said, "I'm shutting the shop for now, I've got to test this thing." Then he told the young man to return in 2 days and swore that if he could forge a truly quality sword, he'd hand it over to him for free. As he walked out, the young man figured the customer service was awful. Then he saw the man smiling, and suddenly it didn't seem so bad anymore. The very next day, Suzumiya burst into the city, still buzzing from yesterday's talk, and hurried straight toward the adventurers. No testing, no messing around, just hunting for answers. Thinking about status, he figured everyone here would be around level 30, but the twist hit fast. The gap between a mage and a regular adventurer wasn't nearly as big as he expected. In the entry-level dungeon of this world, nobody had real magic or martial arts skills, and most mages only owned one single talent, plus there weren't even specialized shops to help them out. Even the clothes in this world were wild. Somehow you could just rinse them with plain water and boom, they'd come out clean. It was ridiculously convenient. Suzumiya figured it would have been way simpler to wash his own clothes, but he was desperate for that bath, so bad it dragged his mind back to the old world. As Suzumiya hunted for Zunanagras, she suddenly realized the sky had swallowed the day. Now it was dark outside, and it was already evening. He dropped his head, convinced that chasing this herb had made him miss what really mattered. Then, out of nowhere, something snapped his attention. The young man just barely slipped out of the way of the green wolf's lunge, its growl snapping out of nowhere as it came for him. He clenched his fists and scanned the area, because this wasn't just any wolf, this was a green one, and it had pushed way too far into the forest. He should have pulled the trigger the moment it landed. Suzumiya snapped into action and hurled a fireball, bam, right into the wolf's chest, but then his face flickered with shock as two more wolves came charging from the distance. They snarled with non-stop rage, and Suzumiya tightened his grip on his shield, staring at them from the side. He spun around and froze. Dogs had him boxed in from every angle, at least 4 of them, all snarling, growling, and charging in to tear him apart. Suzumi hurled a fireball, and the second it hit, the levels started climbing in that eerie Ryzen cheer sound, snapping him to the truth. He'd only got 2 dogs left to take down. When he saw just one wolf charging him, it felt deeply wrong. He didn't even get a second to wonder where that second wolf was before it launched onto him from above. The young man barely got his shield up when the first wolf lunged, scratching him with its paws and tearing fresh cuts. Then the second wolf barreled in from the same moment. The hero let out a chuckle and realized magic wasn't some unreachable mystery. He only had to picture it in his mind, and then it would be conjured into existence. He remembered the stone spear and saw his chance asterisk, so he used it. Then the directed stone spears shot out in every direction in one brutal blast, pinning every last wolf. The wolves shot to the side, dug in with their claws, and fought tooth and nail to keep their ground. Suzumiya pushed himself up and let out a shaky breath, because he realized he'd been zoning out, and now it was right on the edge. Soon the young man shocked everyone all over again, only this time it wasn't just the guild members staring in disbelief, because he rushed before Sally and shoved a giant bundle of the grass he'd hunted for all day. She counted them herself and snapped, "There are 697 Zunanagras stalks." The girl went totally silent, then said she'd already learned to toss common sense aside when it came to Suzumiya. She demanded to know if the young guy had been grabbing it all day, because he was only going to get 20,910 yen for it. He bowed his head in embarrassment and admitted it was all true, because he'd been so locked in, stuffing his pockets with grass, that he never even realized he'd already slipped deep into the forest, only to somehow survive an attack from a pack of green wolves. Sally shook with fear and asked if the hero was okay, and he told her he was fine, while 5 wolves lay dead at his feet because he blasted them away with magic. Sally gasped and asked if he really used magic, because it was insanely impressive. Then she frowned and said magic doesn't work on groups of monsters, so she demanded to know how he wiped them all out. Suzumiya shot him a stunned look, and he just shrugged, saying he dodged their attacks and snapped his shield up to bounce the magic right back at them. Sally shot back that it wasn't easy. First, you've got to lock in and stay perfectly still for about 3 seconds to cast magic, and if he planned on using a shield, then he should have been concentrating too. Suzumiya realized this wasn't his first time hearing it, because Doveridge-san had already said something exactly like this before. She said the real thing that mattered was that he was totally fine. If he needed a potion or a healing spell, she could call a mage, but Suzumiya didn't need any of that. He figured a healing spell had to be powerful, so he decided there was only one thing to do: dive deeper into magic and learn everything he could. He reckoned his mana was regenerating at over 2 per minute, so using cheap spells felt like a total waste. He figured he needed real power, maybe even a healing spell. Suzumiya watched him clamp his hands into fists with full confidence, then swear that from this day on he'd start training his magic. With his hand pressed to his heart, he swore, starting right now, he'd train to become a sword mage and sharpen his skills until they shined. Suzumiya slipped into the forest to put his magic to the test, but right now he needed search-type spells, because he knew the area well enough to be lost. He acted like he was blasting his magic outward, standing dead center in the ring. Then he willed the magical energy from his hand straight into the nearest tree. Boom, right as it hit, Suzumiya snapped to it and shouted that she could actually feel the tree's bark. He grinned, convinced he'd finally figured it all out, and then Suzumiya went straight to work, trying to crank the radius of consciousness wider than ever. He scanned animals, snakes, towering trees with their fruits, birds gliding overhead, and grass everywhere, and it hit him all at once so hard he knew he couldn't take it. He finally crumpled onto the ground, stuck replaying the same awful truth. He couldn't use it in a real fight. The information overload hit his brain like a bomb, and it felt like his head was about to split wide open. Then he dropped to the ground and started spiraling, wondering if all of this happened because he still hadn't figured out what he truly wanted to find. The hero refused to quit, so he tried again, slapped his hand to his forehead, and forced that magical energy to spill outward, then pushed it through cold, relentless information analysis to filter it. When he finally pulled it off, the young man felt it. Magic had shifted. Right in front of him, a glowing window blinked into existence like a circular map, but it didn't show everything. It pointed to just one thing he was hunting, and the reach was painfully limited. He lined up the maps, stacked one on top of the other, and then, boom, everything clicked, and his face lit up as he declared that the primitive radar was finally ready. Turns out this magic was called perception magic. He realized he'd have to use magic points to widen the range, but to keep that range steady, he'd be burning money instead, and for the first time he thought he might finally dodge the ambush. 3 days ago, Suzumiya remembered Dovrag-san promising he'd hand the sword back once it was finished, so now she knew exactly what she had to do: rush over and get the lowdown on how the tempering was done. Right when he burst in at the forge doorway and asked about his sword, the dwarf grinned and told him, "It's ready." The man bragged that tempering could work miracles. Coal iron was tough, sure, but once it was tempered, iron became downright unstoppable. The boy guessed he must have meant steel when he said coal iron. So the blacksmith's old stuff might have been wrought iron or something close to it, and once you harden it, it just won't leave that visible change, unlike steel. The blacksmith grinned and said, "Since I promised you this blade for free, why not take the sword I forged just yesterday?" Dovrug insisted it was one of his finest, and told the boy he could keep using it until he brought back the special material. The blacksmith thrust the sword into the boy's hands and told him to swing for himself, and when the blade moved, his face lit up like he'd nailed perfection. Nervously gripping the sword, the young man actually swung it, and instantly realized he didn't have a clue how to wield a blade. The young man clamped down on the handle with pure force, then lunged forward like his life depended on it, only to unleash a swing so powerful it stunned everyone. Stunned by what he'd just done, he felt his own body move like it was second nature, and the blacksmith just sat there, rubbing his beard with a satisfied grin. The man said the way Suzumiya swings his sword gives him away. No rookie could move like that, and once the thought lands, he's sure. That boy was a swordsman before the memory loss, because he still knows how to use the blade, and he's got the power to grow even stronger. The young man let out a quiet laugh to himself, stunned by how unreal his martial arts talent really was. He told the blacksmith the sword felt perfect in his grip, but admitted he didn't know if he had the strength to handle it, while the blacksmith stroked his beard and laughed it off, saying it was a tiny price to pay since he could forge far better swords now. He told him the kid had slipped him a secret technique, then leaned in and asked, "So you really expect me to hand over this special tech for free?" The young man shrugged it off, saying he didn't care how it was distributed, because the techniques were made to be used, and deep down he figured it couldn't possibly make his situation any worse. The dwarf nodded and said those were perfect words for a young man, and then he promised that if anything ever came up down the road, he'd be there to help. He admitted it hit him then. This young guy didn't look like a mage, so why hadn't he ever seen him wearing armor? Suzumiya got so hooked on how awesome the shield felt that he totally forgot he still had to wear armor. He said, "Since we're talking about it, I want light armor, something that won't cage my movement," and the blacksmith shot back, "Then leather armor's the answer." He told them, "I only work with sheet metal armor, but I know a master leather worker." Then, no delay, he sent the young man straight to them. As he stormed out of the forge, Suzumiya couldn't help wondering, would this dwarf be the real deal like Dovrage-san or not? The moment he stepped into the room, a girl in an apron greeted him and grilled Suzumiya. Was he a rookie adventurer? The hero couldn't shake the feeling she looked more like a clerk than anything else. He shot back that he really was an adventurer, and that Dovrag-san had sent him to deliver the armor. The moment the girl laid eyes on Suzumiya, she clocked the maker instantly. She asked right then to see it up close, and the young man handed the sword over without a second thought. He figured she'd clock every tiny detail, and the girl inspected the weapon with razor-focused care. Out of nowhere, she flung a strip of cloth into the air. Then, before it even landed, she sliced it cleanly in two with her sword. The girl sized up the sword and realized it was razor-sharp, and Suzumiya couldn't help but wonder, was she truly thinking straight to even think about using something like that? He finally noticed the room was empty, no one else anywhere. Could this be the master Dover everyone kept talking about? Then she leaned in and confirmed the sword was forged by that dwarf, and she'd never laid eyes on steel this beautiful in her life. Suzumiya clocked it. Boku was the name the girl used for herself, and then she smiled and said, "A sword, only as good as its armor. She didn't need to ask for anything else, just what kind of material the boy preferred. When he asked what materials he could use for armor, the craftswoman whipped her hand toward a wall covered in hanging samples and said one of them was garden leather. She bragged that it costs about 15,000 lives, but the payoff is unreal, top-tier protection, way lighter than iron armor and zero outstanding weak points, and it's one of her favorite materials. She said there was a cheaper green wolfskin option, but it barely held up, offering weaker protection and letting fire rip right through. The master warned her that even a single blast of simple fire magic would turn that armor's owner into a total disaster, so she never once recommended wolfskin. The girl snapped that she had zero choice. Because she'd already forged armor using the customer's materials, the only thing left to use was basically the curtain skin, and Suzumiya nodded along. The craftswoman explained that because she mostly sold gear to fresh-faced adventurers, she had no cash to stash pricey items, so the hero nodded along and still couldn't figure out why her humble pride bothered him. He spotted the armor crouched in the corner, black steel, a gray cape draped over one shoulder, and the girl fidgeted, tapping her cheek with a shaky little finger. She bragged that this armor steals the wearer's magic points without asking, firing off defensive magic on its own, but for most people it shuts down after just 30 minutes, so it ended up as a sad store decoration. So the armor got ditched and turned into store decor, and Suzumiya couldn't stop thinking that the kind draining the owner's magic points was exactly the setup he needed. He fired up his appraisal power, instantly spotting that it was a prototype set of magical protective gear that drank 20 points of magic every hour, and the hero realized that meant his regeneration would finally have what it needed. So the young man shot the girl a question: how tough was that armor and what would it cost? She grinned and said it was as strong as a garden's skin, so you could sell it for the exact same price. She crossed her arms tight across her chest, nerves jangling, and demanded if Suzumiya was really about to buy that armor, only to hear herself insist, "I don't recommend it." The hero grinned and said he just wanted to test the armor, then if it felt terrible, he'd ditch it and grab leather armor instead. The craftswoman grinned, paused just a beat, and said that if that was the case, then everything would be fine. She quickly took the measurements, promised the armor would be ready by tomorrow evening, and told Suzumiya to show up the moment the evening bell rang. Before he left, he leaned in and asked what else they had for sale besides armor, and then he admitted he was thinking about grabbing a staff today. The girl shot back that if he wanted a staff, he should head next door to the magic shop. Then a buzzing sound ripped through the air. Black pixels crawled across the space. Then a real door started sprouting from the floor, growing upward like it had a life of its own. The door swung open and a girl in a tall black hat stepped in, clutching a magic staff, and asked, "So, did you summon me?" Craftswoman in a rage snapped that nobody was allowed into her shop without permission, and when the new guest pressed, "Then why not, everything's fine, right?" Suzumiya found that answer downright shocking. He finally clocked it, this wasn't a trick, she was a real magician, and Aura looked the part too. She grinned and said, "I'm Aura." She snapped her attention to Suzumiya and asked if he needed staff, and the rude woman shot back, "Yeah, he does." Then she added that Doveridge-san had already put the place on the map for the young man, and the hero couldn't believe he didn't know the dwarf was this famous. Aura yanked his hand and told him, "Then come with me right now, we're going to the store." Dragging him along, she smirked and said, "I sell a ton of different stuff." As Suzumiya steered him and the craftswoman inside, she couldn't help but gasp, because when they crossed the threshold, spiral staircases curled everywhere, and magical lanterns glowed overhead like they'd been waiting for them. Aura hustled him to a wall packed with staffs and grilled him on what kind of weapon Suzumiya wanted for himself. He blurted, baffled, "Wait, there are so many asterisk types, how do they all differ?" And Ra shot back that the usual rule was simple: the longer the staff, the faster the magic. She snatched one up and said, "Control gets harder the longer the staff, so you'd better pick one that feels right. Its standard length runs from 60 to 120 centimeters. The sorceress yanked a staff off the wall and declared, "This one's the slower model, only 60 centimeters long." Then she said once you swing it, the speed jumps 10 times, perfect for tight spaces. Suzumiya nodded like he truly got it, then shot back a question: "Is there a staff that boosts speed threefold?" The moment he said it, both Aura and Tanner reacted like something just hit them out of nowhere. Ira snapped that she didn't have a staff like that, because it wouldn't even hurt a thing, and besides, it was only 20 centimeters long. Suzumiya snapped back that his magic didn't need a staff to move at full speed, so he figured triple acceleration would be plenty. Plus, if he fought with a shield and sword, the staff would shrink down and stay out of the way. Aura burst out laughing at the young man's claim that he'd fight with a sword and a shield. She told him, "You're so fascinating, I can have you set up with a staff by tomorrow." Then she snapped, "But don't pin any blame on me if it turns out to be useless." Suzumir blurted it out and immediately felt how weird it sounded. Then it hit him. Sally said you have to lock in and focus to cast magic, and that's exactly why a magic swordsman is basically unheard of in this world. The hero figured as long as Ara could craft the staff he wanted, no matter what, he'd finally be satisfied. Suzumiya jabbed a finger at one staff and asked if slicing off 20 centimeters would be smart. Then Ara erupted into laughter. Her laughter spilled out as she explained that the staffs had their functions tied to different parts, so they couldn't just be cut shorter. He had no clue what any of it meant, but somehow it felt totally normal that he didn't understand. Ara couldn't calm his nerves one bit, and Suzumiya kept saying his gear would be ready by tomorrow, so Ara just couldn't wait. Soon, Sally barreled up to the hero and told him she needed to talk, because she was all set to push the rink promotion. When the boy pushed her again, she finally spilled the truth. She wanted answers about the Zunning grass and the mess with the green wolves too, and Sally bluntly told him Kide-san's work for the guild was already more than enough to earn the promotion. Turns out adventurers don't just get promoted on a whim. They need the right experience level, and they must finish at least one everyday job before they can climb up for the first time. Sally told Kaidi-san that if he wanted a promotion, he'd better go snag a job as a loader, cleaner, or nanny. Then Suzumiya nodded, got it, and headed straight for the task boards. With his rank came brutal chores, garbage runs, and cargo hauling, until out of nowhere, something snapped the hero's focus and yanked him to attention. He picked a task and told Sally, and she shot back that he'd chosen a seriously strange one. She said the iron ore shipment shouldn't be a problem since it was routine, but everyone hated it, like having to go pick zanana grass. Sally said, with the weight and the distance this request demands, there are better jobs, so tell me, hero, do you want to take this one? Suzumiya couldn't believe the quest was worth it, but he shot back with confidence. He had an inventory, so it'd be fine. He leaned in and asked Sally how they were tweaking the inventory capacity, and she shot back that it had to be tied to how many magic points it had at the moment it was first unlocked. Suzumiya sat there and finally got it. His inventory slots were tied directly to his starting magic points, and that meant exactly 1,012 slots, each with its own capacity limit. He couldn't stop thinking how much weight he could cram into his inventory, and the hero knew this was his kind of jackpot, so he immediately geared up and set off on the mission. Soon enough, Suzumiya was already huffing hard as he sprinted, and that long-eared animal barely scrambled out of the way in pure terror. He figured his speed was so wild he could blow past Olympic marathon legends, and right now, the hero was charging along at 20 kilometers per hour. Suzumiya realized that after leveling up, he could sprint for a whole day without stopping, though that's the last thing he wanted to do. Right here, he spots a man hauling something, and the guy calls out that he's here to handle a guild request, then immediately demands, "Show me the guild map." After he'd studied it, the man nodded and said it all looked totally believable, then handed the kid the iron ore and told him to haul off every last bit he could. At first, the ore man clocked that this young adventurer looked way too fragile to make it, then panic and shock snapped across his face. He leaned in and asked how much Suzumiya he could cram into his inventory, then the answer hit, about 1,500 kilograms. He stared in disbelief and asked if his gear was really that huge, then admitted even he couldn't haul more than 200 kilograms himself. Suzumiya caught on that this was just the usual inventory standard, so he shot back that his stash was probably way bigger than everyone else's, and honestly, he had no clue how much more it could even hold. The man snapped back that they were short on carriers for a bunch of reasons, and if the hero really cared, he'd help move the ore next time too. Suzumiya would love that. At last, the last slot snapped shut, and this one carried a weight of 2,012 kilograms. The man just stared and said, "Yeah, that's a lot." Even with everything going on, Suzumiya still managed to haul in the ore, and the guy was completely stunned. The hero snapped back, "This is just one full slot. I've still got over 1,000 free slots left." The man demanded, "So you're the embodiment of a chest or what?" But deep down, he's the one who's desperate to be a man. In the smelter, someone was shouting for the boss, demanding he look at Suzumiya and the ore they'd brought in. He dumped every last piece of ore he hauled in, and when the dust settled, it totaled roughly 10 tons. The moment the man caught up with the hero, his jaw dropped. He couldn't believe the storage was already packed, then blurted out how many trips the hero had made. The hero just smirked, "One." Suzumiya figured he could stack even more, but the man slammed the brakes after the 5th slot, then warned him, if the hero grabbed another thing, there'd be 0 storage left. When the guild's evaluation finally wrapped up, the young guy got an F rank, and Sally was absolutely stunned by the report that claimed he'd hauled just 10 tons. The very next day, Suzumiya marched straight to the merchants. His armor snapped into place like it was made for him, but Ara just wouldn't buy it, convinced that short staff had no way to be useful. Suzumiya said it was more than enough. At last, his equipment was fully ready and set. Arad let out a giggle and shoved the staff into his hands. It fit perfectly between her palms like it was made for the moment, and when the hero called it pretty cute, the girl exploded into laughter. So Suzumiya was completely kitted up, and it was time to unleash it all in battle. He was heading straight into the forest's depths. Right when the young man started cruising, a sharp beep from his radar snapped him to a stop. He spun around and spotted a pack of green wolves. And it wasn't just 2 or 3 of them. No, it was a massive flock, and their backs blanketed the entire clearing. Suzumiya guessed there might be over 300, maybe 500 out there, and the thought terrified him, because he knew he couldn't possibly keep up, but if they latched onto him by accident, he could wind up dragging them straight into the city. Realizing he had nowhere left to run, the hero snapped into action and unleashed his abilities to fight. He cracked open the magic shop potion that had been collecting dust and downed it. This magic point regeneration accelerator blasted his natural mana recovery to *10 times *, lasting a full *3 hours *. For most mages, this thing was straight up useless, but Suzumiya wasn't like the rest, and it could change everything for her. He snapped his hand forward and unleashed a storm of stone spears at the wolves. Pure shock flickered across their faces. Suzumiya burst out that it worked, and when he dug into magic, he uncovered 5 brutal truths about it. He figured he could pump way more MP into his magic to boost his firepower fast, even if the blast radius didn't scale nearly as much. The hero figured he just had to go all in with spells, so he blasted the sky with a blazing fireball. Flames swallowed the green wolves whole, but Suzumiya didn't stop. She kept ramming forward with stone spears. The wolves snarled as the ambush hit, but they refused to fold, charging harder, clawing at the chaos to break through and reach Suzumiya. A young man snapped a sword into his grip and bolted forward to strike, hurling up a shield to guard every inch of himself. He tore through the line of green wolves, swinging his sword hard, and took down several before they could even react. By the end, his clothes were shredded and splattered with black stains, so the hero just shrugged, saying this was exactly what you'd expect from the green wolves. He sat on a rock while monsters lay defeated around him, and he warned them all. Everyone was charging straight for him. Suzumiya traced the scratch on his cheek and swore it had only been 3 minutes. The hero insisted those 3 minutes weren't wasted at all. His skills kept leveling up the whole time. The young man couldn't believe it. There were 513 wolves on his tail, and somehow they all swarmed together in massive packs like they'd coordinated. He shrugged and said it didn't matter. He just had to run back and warn Sally-san, but first he had to round up the wolves. Heavy footsteps crashed through the woods and a brutal roar echoed. An armored monster stalked by, swinging its thick tail like a warning. Sally blinked in disbelief and demanded the young man admit it. Did he really slaughter 513 green wolves? She grilled him on where he'd snagged all those wolves, and Suzumiya smirked. I stumbled on them after just 15 minutes of wandering in the forest. Then he leaned in and asked, isn't it weird to run into a whole pack like that? Sally snapped back that green wolves almost never band together in packs this huge. She said that 100 in a pack is still the usual thing, but once it hits 500, the rules stop feeling normal, and the hero could only wonder if he was cursed or blessed because somehow he'd racked up a ton of experience. Sally blurted, thank God the hero's safe, then grinned and asked if he wanted to sell his loot because she could take about 100, so Suzumi nodded and agreed to sell 100. Next day he stormed back to the blacksmith and demanded they inspect his sword and shield. Then the blacksmith gladly said yes. Staring at the sword, the man said he could tell the boy had been out hunting green wolves for over 2 days. He pointed out the shield's scratches screamed green wolves, and the sword looked like it had been drenched in fights, proof he'd mowed down monsters after monsters. When the blacksmith first laid eyes on him, he couldn't believe the young man could pull off something like that. Suzumiya swore it never even crossed his mind that blacksmiths could be this incredible. He told the blacksmith, I nailed the sword so my rank should have jumped, but the blacksmith shook his head and said, yeah, sure, but don't count on it, far from enough for that kid to swing it better. After fixing the sword, the blacksmith shoved it into the hero's hands and admitted he only bothered because the shield was still holding up, then warned him to stay sharp around that thing. Then he said he still wanted Suzumi to swap that blade for a different one, and Suzumi couldn't believe it. The blacksmith told him, sure, that blade's tough, but it's still not iron and it'll never match a sword forged from special metal, then leaned in and warned him, with your skills, you better carry a spare blade. Suzumiya nodded and told him he got it. Maybe those rare monster materials were something like a dragon S. He asked the blacksmith what it would cost to get a dragon sword, and the smith just smirked. Anything less than 4 billion would never do. Suzumiya's jaw dropped when the blacksmith swore dragons only have 5 body parts fit for forging a sword. He said dragons are so rare they've become pure legend, and you can't slap a price tag on something like that, because if a dragon shows up, entire countries get crushed, and the world tumbles straight into chaos. Suzumiya clocked how rare dragon material was and grilled the blacksmith for the best option, and he snapped back that if she wanted real sharpness, she should forge a sword out of iron lizard metal. Suzumiya demanded to know who it was, and the blacksmith straight up said it was a B-rank monster, a huge, armored lizard plated in hard metal. He said the metal skin is the exact stuff you need for a sword, but these guys aren't just tough, they're brutally strong and totally ordinary, and every swordsman is basically doomed the moment they step in. He told the kid that if he wanted a sword forged from that stuff, it would cost at least 5 million, and when it came to taking punishment, metal lizards crushed dragons. Suzumiya figured those lizards were absolute monsters, but it didn't matter, because no matter what, he wasn't finding them anytime soon, and even if he ever wanted to hunt them, that was a plan for far in the future. Next day, Suzumiya rushed back to the guild gate, only to find it locked tight again, and that sign mocking her, telling every fighter adventurer to report to the forest gate. Packed at the gate with Sally-san right there, Suzumiya snapped around and demanded to know what the heck had happened. She said that ever since word about the green wolves hit the streets yesterday, a bunch of adventurers rushed out to investigate, and then they found the terrifying truth. A whole crowd of monsters was marching straight for the city. She thanked Suzumiya for carving out time to get ready, and then the hero finally understood. They weren't just planning anymore, they were recruiting adventurers to go hunt monsters. From how Sally said it, he figured it meant a huge swarm of monsters, and at least they clocked her in time. Then he pressed, so is this just a defensive brawl? Sally shot back that they couldn't just hold the gate, because the monsters rolled in with gorgons, built to punch straight through defenses, so Suzumiya had to sprint to the front lines, then claim her reward. Suzumiya asked if they were really ready to toss a total newbie straight into the front lines. Sally shot back that he was one of the strongest adventurers in the whole city, even if he'd only just started. With nothing but puny monsters around, their branch guild got stomped down to weak, and they desperately needed Suzumi's help. The hero basically shrugged and said, "Then there's nothing left to do, I've got it all," and when Sally thanked him, she promised he'd be one of the strongest pillars propping up their whole plan. A bunch of men stepped in and told the girl they were ready. She nodded, understood the plan, and then sent those men off with Kaide-san straight to the front lines. Before she could even finish her sentence, Suzumiya snapped into motion, bolted into the forest, and vanished from sight. He couldn't wrap his head around it. How on earth would they shove him onto the front lines without getting him killed? No way, and deep down, he knew they were asking for more than he could possibly give. Even so, the hero clung to this city like it was his own, seeing the invasion as the perfect shot to level up, because he was determined to shut it down. His radar screamed with loud beeps, and a swarm of white dots flashed back at him, then green wolves snapped into view. He decided he'd take on those monsters, close enough to smash with every swing. After that, he decided to unleash magic and smash those green wolves with the power behind his hands. The wolves snarled with full-on fury, but the hero's magic point surged higher, and that storm of power made him certain he could take the win. Suddenly he snapped his gaze away from the green wolves, heard pounding blows, spun around, and faced a monster that looked just like a boar. The hero called up a stone spear, and when it struck, blade after blade punched into the monster, driving it to plant its hooves and stagger to a crawl. Suzumiya couldn't believe it when the monster kept coming and didn't quit, and the moment the hero realized Sally-san had warned him about this very thing, he snapped into action and used the appraisal skill. 7 stone spears just to shave a measly 30% off this Gorgon's health, meaning if he'd swung those same spears differently, he could have wiped out 10 wolves instead. Suddenly the Gorgon let out a crushing roar and then collapsed, its vitality hitting 0, dead in its tracks. The hero froze, stunned, and couldn't help thinking, was it a fatal strike? Because losing 70% of health like that could only mean one thing. He shrugged it off because what truly pulled him in was the monsters, every move. He realized that unlike those green wolves from a few days back, every one of these monsters was barreling straight ahead, like they were fleeing from something brutal, so he had to track down what was driving them. Soaring high over the forest, Suzumiya froze in midair for a full minute, and sure enough, every last animal was sprinting with one clear destination in mind. He crumpled to the ground, and right between the trees, something massive surged into view, slamming its gigantic paw onto the wolf and pinning him so tight his body was nearly all but gone under those claws. After sizing the thing up, Suzumiya realized she wasn't dealing with just any monster. This was an iron lizard packed with serious strength. He blurted that he'd finally found it, the iron lizard he'd been talking about, and sure, its life force was weaker than the Gorgon's, but that thing still clanked with hard iron armor. Suzumiya figured he couldn't take this on by himself, so he bolted back to report what was happening. The lizard spotted him and snarled. Suzumiya's stomach dropped as she realized they were already found, and then she scrambled to figure out how fast it was, praying he could actually outrun it. Suzumiya bolted and spun around, realizing the lizard was closing the gap, and for a split second, retreat flashed through his mind as an option. This lizard was dubbed the Swordsman Killer because its armor was so brutal and thick that even a stone spear, straight-up physical damage, couldn't scratch it. So Suzumiya yanked out his staff and figured he could funnel magic at 10 points every second. Then, after charging it for 1 full minute, he'd unleash a massive fireball. Then the fireball slammed into the lizard. Suzumiya went wide-eyed as the monster took it without a scratch and kept charging, forcing the hero to barely slip away in time. The lizard whipped its scaly tail like a weapon, and Suzumiya dove to dodge, yet it still slammed straight into his leg. The hero clutched his injured leg as shock hit. One wrong strike from that lizard had snapped his bone clean in two. Still, he breathed out because he'd already mastered healing magic. But he wouldn't dare relax his guard, because if he passed out right now, that would be the end. He flashed back to the blacksmith, Arrow, Sally, and those elves, and then he snapped, refusing to let that monster slip into the city. He stepped up to face the monster head-on, but without any piercing magic in his arsenal, he had no option, so he sparked lightning magic and forged a brand new piercing spell on the spot. But when he thrust the shield out in front of him, nothing happened, no glow, no activation. He stared, heart-thumping, and wondered what secret condition would finally trigger that wild imagination. The lizard cracked its tail right beside him again, and the hero went, "This is it, we're doomed." But then it hit him. Unlike sword swings, magic could be stored, packed away, and unleashed with way more power. He heard that it was a projectile built to punch through, didn't need to be packed with huge explosives, just needed to scream forward at brutal speed and drive its force with pressure. The hero finally saw it. This was the only move that could crack through that brutal armor, so he slammed into his training magic, the one called pressure ***. Suzumiya snapped her sword and staff into place at the same time, and knew this was going to be a gamble. She'd pour every last point she had left into this magic, but first, she had to wait 15 minutes. The adventurer figured if he understood how that lizard moved, he'd slip every single fast attack like it was nothing. When it came to tail attacks, he tapped into his martial arts talent, reading the monster's moves, predicting exactly which way its tail would swing, then snapping in to deflect every hit. 15 minutes finally crawled by, everything was ready, set in place and locked in. Now it was time to strike, and Suzumiya was already thinking, just target the armor's weakest spot. He figured the lizard's safe spot had to be its back, so the hero snapped into action and went straight for it. With a battle cry, he dove down from above to slam the attack home, and the hero swore this was his full power, while Madrick concentrated every last ounce of fury into his hand. It was pressure magic, like a funnel that narrowed down to a point, and when it hit, the lizard arched its back hard. Suzumiya crashed to the ground, stunned. Could he really have pulled it off? His radar screamed with beeps, and the lizard sprawled on the ground, so the hero figured it was over, convinced he'd wiped out the monster all by himself. Back in the city, Suzumiya scanned everything around him like a hawk, just in case. The radar stayed dead quiet, and it looked like the monsters the iron lizard controlled had slipped back and vanished. He prayed Sally and the others were safe, then she called his name and she practically shouted, "Thank God you're alive." He demanded, "Why do you think I'm dead?" And Sally snapped back, "Because you charged straight ahead, then vanished, no trace at all, long after the monsters were gone." She demanded to know where Suzumiya was, confessing she was terrified for him, and he shot back an apology, saying he thought she'd snapped into panic because she'd let an adventurer get to her. The hero snapped, asking if she hadn't told him to hit the front lines, and Sally fired back that she'd told him to join the others there, never to charge straight into danger. The moment he really thought it through, he couldn't deny it, everything suddenly looked exactly like that. Sally leaned in and asked what he did the moment the monsters backed off. Suzumiya said he swept the area around him after battling the iron lizard, and it instantly blew the girl's mind. She snapped that it was serious and they had to warn the magicians, even though the whole city only had 5 of them, and the hero shot back, telling her not to worry at all, because he'd already defeated the lizard. He insisted the monsters backed off because he'd taken care of her, while the poor girl just stood there, utterly stunned, unable to get a single word out. She finally shot back that she'd totally forgotten. Kade was a mage who fought with a sword, so yeah, that explained everything. Then she leaned in and asked if he could use wind magic. The girl said that to beat that lizard, you usually need a whole squad of C-rank magicians or higher, because they yank the beast into the sky with wind magic and finish it up there. So then, how in the world did Suzumiya pull off the win? The hero said he just stabbed through her armor with his magic, but the girl refused to buy it. So Suzumiya pushed the next move and told her to check the lizard sitting in his inventory. Sally stared at the lizard's massive size, blurted out what the hero even carried, and he smirked that his inventory dwarfed everyone else's. Then Sally wondered if the lizard's back should have had a hole. Right when she started to look, Suzumiya scooped her up in his arms and offered to help. Upstairs, Sally gasped that this was straight up astonishing, because she'd never once heard of magic powerful enough to punch a hole that big, so she immediately decided Suzumiya's magic had to be totally different from anything normal. She thanked him like crazy for saving her from that lizard and swore she'd tell the branch manager. Then Suzumiya said they'd meet up later, right before the girl grabbed his hand and begged him to come with her. Suzumiya sat at the table when a man slammed his own head down and blared that he was absolutely guilty. The hero was completely thrown off, so he grilled the man, "Are you the head of this branch?" and admitted he didn't get what was going on, while the man calmly said, "Yeah, we've known for a while that the monsters have been acting way too suspicious."
What?
He said this was a clear warning that a monster like no other had showed up, and they ignored it completely, so the leader takes the blame for what happened, and if Suzumiya hadn't been there, a whole bunch of people would have been killed. The kid looked at the iron lizard and knew it was brutally tough to beat, and he figured they didn't have much money to fix this mess, so he just shrugged and said, "There's nothing we can do." The guild leader leaned in, begging for a favor. He needed the boy to keep this whole incident under wraps or chaos would spread. Suzumiya shot him a look and asked, "What's going on?" He told them the guild would spill the truth sooner or later, but right now the city was already buzzing with rumors, because nobody in their right mind would believe a lizard got beaten by just one adventurer. Then the guild master tried to sweet-talk the hero into keeping the lizard's corpse for himself, even offering to let him claim it if Suzumiya wanted, but he refused flat out. He asked if he could loop Duvrag Hussein in so the weapon could be forged from the lizard. Then the guy blinked in shock because he couldn't believe the hero even knew him, and he shrugged that it shouldn't be a problem since the dwarf barely ever dealt with people. But the guild flat out lacked the gear to process the iron lizard, so they'd have to chase it in other cities, and Suzumiya's jaw dropped at that news. The guild leader straight up confirmed it. Down in the southeast, there's a dwarven mining town stocked with the kind of equipment that can pull this off. Suzumiya's eyes narrowed. Since the monsters in that blacksmith town of Herrera were Gordons, he decided that's exactly where he'd go. The hero figured out that in this world, nights were for travel and noon was for sleep, so with time still left before he had to go, he threw a heartfelt goodbye to everyone who'd helped him. And it was like Duvrog already saw it coming, that the kid was about to launch into a brand new journey. Suzumiya beamed at Sally, then shoved a pile of zanana grass right in front of her, and when Sally answered back, Suzumiya went and called him by name. The girl shot a question about what happened to the head of the branch, and he brushed it off, saying nothing major occurred, just that he'd decided to up and leave the city. The young man wanted to head to Herrera to forge a brand new weapon, so he grilled the girl about whether adventurers came by rarely. Then she shrugged and told him, "No, that's totally normal." But the moment she pictured Kaidesan packing up for another city, her face crumpled with sadness, yet Suzumiya stepped in and told her, "Don't worry. Those wolves swarmed because of the iron lizard, but he already smashed it, so the city should finally be safe, even if he's not around." Sally snapped back that she understood everything, then asked if he wanted to sell the grass to the Zunin, and Suzumiya couldn't believe his luck, coming to this world and running into someone as kind as Sally San. The hero figured one day he'd have the girl back as his quest giver, and he made sure to thank her for everything. He shoved a branch of zanana grass into Sally-san's hands and told her he was praying they'd meet again someday. She flashed a bright smile, took the twig from him, and promised with pure certainty they'd meet again somewhere. 5 days after they left, Suzumiya checked the radar and told everyone he'd heard the ride from Ain to Herrera takes around 10 days on horseback. Then he spotted a valley tucked in the mountains and went, "That's it, Herrera." By the distance, it should take him about an hour to reach it, yet he's somehow moving twice as fast as a horse, probably because he's trained harder than anyone. Suddenly the radar erupted with warning beeps, and Suzumiya's stomach dropped as she realized several people were slipping through the forest, even though a road sat right there. Suzumiya decided to track them down in person, and when he arrived, he saw a child bound and lying on the ground while several men sat nearby. He figured they were probably robbers, the kind this world labels for people who have truly sinned. They warned that if you run into them, you'd better report it to the guild, or handle it yourself if you can. And apparently these guys kidnapped a kid from Herrera, so something had to be done right now. Check everything fast. The hero fired up his appraisal power and clocked it. Yep, all 6 of them were bandits, just like he feared, and Suzumiya warned him this would be his first showdown against humans. One of the robbers pushed up to leave, so they snapped, "Where are you going?" And then every single one of them jerked their heads up. They started demanding answers. What the hell is that sound? So one of them shoved the other two off to investigate, and soon they had no choice but to admit something was really going on. The man in the fur cape spotted a stone spear jammed in a tree, and right above him Susamia was perched. Then she launched off the branch the instant her chance appeared. Right in mid-jump, he blasted them with pressure magic, no contact needed, and sent his opponents flying off their feet like a shockwave hit. Before the other bandits could even process what just happened, they snapped their heads around, then spotted Suzumiya and blurted, "Who are you?" He snorted back, convinced he could catch them, then overpowered it because his magic was way too strong, and for some reason he felt zero remorse, seeing this world as nothing but danger. But that kid mattered most. He slammed his eyes on the system window and saw the girl was trapped under forced hypnosis. Even with his magic blazing, the young man still couldn't grasp what forced hypnosis really was, so he clung to one desperate hope, that it could be cured. He burst into the city, cradling her in his arms, and the whole crowd snapped their heads around, shock screaming across every face. A burly man with a beard braided into two neat braids burst out in anger, claiming Susamia had harmed his daughter Sumasa, then snapped, "Wait, just wait," because he knew they already thought he was suspicious. The hero leaned in and told her, "I just pulled you out of those bandits in the nearby forest," and when he looked closer, he realized she was stuck under forced hypnosis. The young men said, "Then let Suzume hand it to us. Forced hypnosis is easy to fix with the right herbs." The father came charging to his daughter, terrified something had happened to her, and the dark-haired young man hurried to apologize, then snapped that the father was right to worry, because the girl had stormed into the forest that morning and hadn't come back, and yeah, dwarves are just born with hot tempers. The bearded man swallowed his pride, apologized for the outburst, and introduced himself as Sumizu. Then he lit up with gratitude, thanked her for saving his daughter, and promised that if Suzumiya ever needed anything from the city, he'd do everything he could. The hero lit up and demanded they take him to a shop to process the iron lizard, until the dwarf slammed the brakes on that idea and said, "Forget it, we're celebrating," and insisted Suzumiya should join them. The dwarves slapped the table into place and cheered with raised glasses for Sumisa's return, but the hero shot a look around and realized nobody was even hearing him. Because of course they weren't, not after that man had just brought his daughter back. The girl yanked the hero's attention away from his meal, then introduced herself as Sumisa, saying she couldn't remember a thing, yet she was overflowing with gratitude for saving her. Susamia shot her a worried look and asked if it was really okay to return to work right after that wild adventure, and the girl smiled back, saying she was totally fine, thanks to him. She asked whether the hero was a wanderer because he looked like an adventurer right out of a legend, and the moment he had to halt his journey for her, she couldn't stop feeling guilty. The young man snapped back that none of it was her fault. He'd come to this city only because he'd heard about a secret technique to process the iron lizard, and Sumisa should just let him use the workshop. Suzumiya lit up and promised, "You've got it, I'll gladly help." Then Sumizu popped in, saying, "If you need a sword, lean on me, but fair warning, it'll cost 1 million just to forge it." Grinning through sheer gratitude for saving his daughter, he offered a massive 50% discount. Then Suzumiya tried to pay the full price, but he understood why that wasn't possible, because he just didn't have enough money. He offered to sell them the materials since he had an iron lizard corpse right there. Sumisa didn't buy a word of it and called it a terrible joke, so the hero decided the only way out was to prove it. The dwarves could barely breathe. There it was, the corpse of an iron lizard in his hands, and they couldn't believe their eyes. Sumisa snapped that they'd need a massive inventory to fit something like that, and told him to run the news straight to the accounting department. The accountant swore the quality would stay untouched, and the final price would be nailed down only after the metal was stripped away. Then he threw out, straight-faced, that it had cost 3 million bodies per kilogram. He said he could have bought it all outright, but this deal was still way better than what the guilds were offering. Suzumiya's eyes went wide at how much he could score, and she nodded and agreed. Sumizu grinned and said, "Then it's basically in the bag time to get to work," and right there, he noticed the hero could unleash fire magic. Then the dwarf slammed the moment into action and said it was time to carve up the iron lizard. Suzumiya had to help, and he couldn't hide his shock at how suddenly everything flipped. The young man didn't have time for anything fancy. He blasted it with fire magic just to burn away everything, until only the metal was left outside. The dwarf sized up the hero's gear and said it had to be worth 1/2 ton of metal easy. Then Suzumiya's eyes lit up as she started figuring out exactly how much cash that would turn into. The dwarf said this magic fires like a B-rank, then Suzumiya shot back, so why would a hero even need a sword? Because a lone fighter has to be ready to slice it out up close. Sumizu admitted he'd never seen this style before. then pointed out the staff was only about 20 centimeters, and that was way too short. When Suzumiya bragged that he'd bought the staff from a shop, the dwarf leaned in and claimed it was forged with an iron core and copper skin, perfect for beginners, and then teased that the hero could grab an even faster staff. The young man leaned in and asked, "Can the staff's materials actually crank up the speed of magic, and could you, dwarf, forge me a staff out of an iron lizard?" The blacksmith shot back, "Yeah, I can do it," but warned it would take time. This metal is brutal hard, and it needs special processing with a whole different approach. If the hero wants to forge a staff, he better seek out Sumisa. She makes them better than anyone in the whole city. The hero nodded back, got it. He strode up to Sumisa and demanded a staff forged from an iron lizard, and she shot back that it'd be a luxurious dream, if he could only prove he was certain she could. Suzumiya said, "If I can, I want a 20-centimeter staff that accelerates like the real thing." And the girl shot back, "Yeah, that's impossible." The hero begged her to teach him this because in Herrera, nobody crafts staffs like she does. Her work is the best of the best. She blushed, said, "Then I'll teach the hero everything," and started laying out every single detail about those staffs, so thorough that Suzumiya realized it wasn't going to be some quick lesson at all. Turns out every staff's core is the heart of its magic, because the spell doesn't just run on power, it runs on design. The accelerator has 2 layers, and the denser the outer magic gets and the better the core's quality is, the faster that spell explodes into motion. Magic density is the staff's max magic storage, and it changes with the material. Cram past that limit and the magic starts slipping away fast, dissipating on the spot. So yeah, cranking up the outer shell with a super dense material and upgrading both inner layers of the accelerator section can seriously boost performance. Suzumiya snapped into action, crafting a staff that moved with normal speed magic, yet he could swing it like a sword when the fight kicked off. She eyed him with pure doubt and said she had no clue what he meant, and the hero snapped around to her and demanded she explain it more clearly. Suzumiya tried to tell them, "I need a staff with an iron lizard metal outer shell, then I bolt a blade on it so I can use it as a real sword, and if he traded in those points, he'd get high speed in return." The girl said, "Build a staff with this exact structure, and it'll soak up enough magic to power 100 spells, an amount equal to the mana reserves of 3 regular magicians." Suzumiya fully believed he was 500 times stronger than a normal mage, and that his regeneration was on the same ridiculous level. The hero claimed he could use it and leaned in asking if that wouldn't be the most thrilling thing ever. Then the girl just froze, utterly speechless, and finally said, "That's what makes you an adventurer." She snapped up that wild order on the spot and swore the hero would earn the title of magician, because his magic points drain so fast they're gone even before the spell finishes. Suzumiya snapped back that if that's how it is, he'd crank up the magic points so it never happens again. Boom, every question about weapons was settled. Building the staff would take him 3 whole days, so he filled the downtime by hammering through a few city quests, and every time those iron lizard encounters hit, his hero rank shot up, unlocking quests he couldn't touch before. On this mission, he ran into wolves, and just like always, he charged in with stone spears to hit them again. But these weren't your normal green wolves, these were red ones that could dodge magic like it was nothing, and yeah, it looked like everything had to be rushed. No trees dotted the town, and Suzumiya figured that empty stretch of nothing was the reason monsters almost never wandered anywhere near Herrera. Then the radar started screaming, and when the hero snapped his head around, he spotted 2 people waiting right at the cave entrance. Both got labeled as bandits, and Suzumiya instantly decided to track down whether they were tied to the gang that kidnapped Sumisu-chan. 2 stood guard at the entrance, and more of them lurked deeper inside the cave. The young man's gut screamed robbers, but the whole place felt off, wrong in a way he couldn't explain. Suzumiya stormed into Guildmaster Herrera's office to report she'd finally tracked down the bandits' hideout and spill how everything was going. Herrera just nodded and said it made perfect sense why they'd been pushing their work so fast. Guards are posted at the entrance, which means this gang is huge, and the guild leader promises that once they verify the hero's story, they'll pay him big for the valuable info. They couldn't risk letting it slip yet. If spies were already prowling the city, everything would blow wide open, so they'd start recruiting adventurers at the guild to form a strike force. The odds that Suzumiya would be named the Discoverer were sky-high, so they dragged him in for the next morning. Soon enough, he stormed over to Samasa, asking the staff if everything was ready, only to hear it wasn't done yet. Suzumiya clocked the truth. He couldn't test that new weapon until the bandit raid, and somehow that felt unnecessary anyway, because once the time came, he'd fall back on his current gear. Suzumiya blurted out, asking if the trees around the city were chopped down on purpose. Then she learned the brutal truth. Smelting metal gobbles up so much coal that they cut them down for it, and when she gasped, so they can't even dig coal up in the mines. The answer crushed her. The girl snapped back that it wouldn't work for forging since the metal was trash quality, so Suzumiya stopped, thought hard, and remembered how in his own city they did it with limestone, and he shouted that they could just make coke right from burning coals. Then Sumisa didn't get it, so he broke down how the girl blurted out that stats are her specialty, and even if she wasn't totally sure what that meant, Suzumiya rushed to Ignesen's fuel store, where a man in a black apron stepped up to meet. The hero started breaking down what he meant by this new fuel, and Igmi didn't buy it. He told them that once the method was tested, he'd sell it, and right then, he was willing to foot the bill for every single thing they needed for the experiment. With conditions like that, Ignisen's losses would stay tiny, so the adventurer might end up striking gold, not just find. He admitted the technique wasn't flawless, so it wouldn't always work, and so they finally cracked how to get coke here, but Suzumiya was still off chasing trouble, and it had only been one night since those banned. At last, the strike force finally came face to face with them, adventurers straight from the guild, no less, and the hero couldn't hide how. One of the guys leaned in and said, "Name's Magus, I'm a B-rank wind mage, and I lead the strike force." They slapped the map on the table, calculated the base was 8 kilometers off, and figured there were probably 30 to 40 bandits waiting. It was an E-rank mission, sure, but bandits were swarming the area, and Suzumiya counted 7 men total, including himself. Magi's barked, "Say your name, your rank, and your job," one after another. Valen the swordsman went first, then Zenchi. Right in the middle of Suzumiya's turn, he snapped to attention, threw in his name and rank, and when people realized he was a magic swordsman, they started fighting. Other adventurers scoffed and claimed his skills were way too insane for an E-rank, but Magus turned to Suzumiya and demanded he prove his power. The hero figured it'd be way worse if everyone paid the price for him hiding his real power, so he couldn't afford to hold back. Magis told him to do it like a real man in a no. When the young man showed off his powers, every other adventurer froze in shock. Then he decided swinging the sword was plenty. He gritted his teeth, snapped into magic, and rained down a deadly swarm of stone spears just to prove how powerful. All that remained was a burned-out field, and pure, stunned disbelief blasting across every mage and every adventurer. Suzumiya finally clocked it. He should have gone dual magic, not sword and spell back-to-back, but Magus cut him off, saying Magi's hero couldn't shake the worry that it fell short of expectations, and that was all Magi needed, so he grilled them about. Suzumiya shot back that he could patch up fractures with healing magic and blast the enemy with spells for over 20 minutes. The hero swore he was stuck at E-rank only because he'd only been an adventurer for a single month. Maja bragged that he was unbelievably great and promised they'd be saved. The hero won't lie, he was terrified of charging into the front, but he still nodded and marched straight to the front lines. After they finished talking strategy, someone yawned, then they locked it in. Valen's crew would lead, Magus would tail, and only the 3 of them would. They fanned out across the area to seal every escape route the bandits couldn't even see coming, while the hero clenched up, then jammed the people began dropping like dominoes, and the guy kept shouting, "Everything's fine," while he tried to push everyone. The guy couldn't understand why he was running so fast. Someone told him it didn't matter, and he still demanded, no matter what, the hero has to keep sprinting, every step matters. If he spots someone, he instantly fires off his assessment skill to see if they've been left. The other heroes could barely keep pace, gasping for breath as they rushed after him. He said it was a win the cave didn't split off because they reached the main character braced for something way harder, because the door right in front of them sealed off the cave, had no handle, and behind that door his radar screams nothing's there, yet voices They told him to use magic, and the guy snapped that he'd smash the door. Then, right before he could even finish, Kaidi instantly clocked what one guy loomed on one side of the door and barked, "Start," while another stood straight across from him. The hero burst into the room, and the bandits went wide-eyed, immediately yelling. He fired off the appraisal skill, clocking every move. Then, because they were all bandits, he unleashed a stone spear. Bandits scattered from the main character's shockwave like frightened birds, and Magus finally declared it was over. Then they hit him with, "What about your voice?" The man admitted it was a bit of a letdown, but one thing was clear. Then they started grabbing the loot, and the hero let out a sigh of relief. Everything was fine until he snapped. 7 more people. The guy nodded, swore he'd understand, and promised they'd. The gloomy man finally breathed, "We're here, this is exactly where we needed to be." And then he snapped his head toward the other. He demanded who was there and who they really were, then used pressure magic to crush the bandits' defenses, freeing them. He scooped the girl into his arms and felt how light she was, and then, thinking she'd slipped under forced hypnosis, Kaidi figured his comrade didn't need a rescue yet and rushed over to check Ria's condition. She was the girl, a rare special kind of elf, the sort people don't. Her age stays a mystery, but she's got 2 insane gifts. She can pull magical power out into the world, and she can command magic with total control, while the hero's best skill is only level 3. This power lets you steal mana from nearby enemies, so long as their mana control. The girl jerked awake, and the guy couldn't believe it. How did bandits even grab her? She snapped up and fired questions. The girl flashed a smile, saying the main character's name over and over, then nodded like a judge. The protagonist started wondering what the hell was wrong with this girl. Then a guy rushed up and asked if he said he was just relieved she was okay, then completely spaced on the fact she was still tied up. And surprise, surprise, the girl herself snapped the ropes free, smiled and said she was told. He pressed her could she really break free and do it alone. She shot back that she had zero magic. The protagonist guessed that because she could untie herself, she had magic in her veins. Then the girl shrugged and said, no. He figured she had been pulling off that external magic trick, using his mana without a single clue. Magus promised her girl was safe, then swore he'd hit the guild to track down where she'd been taken. And the girl snapped back that his mana felt impossible to handle, so she refused to go with him. She begged to stick with the protagonist, and he snapped back that she'd already gotten attached to him, then asked if he could handle. The protagonist reached out, offered the girl to come with him, and held out his hand. She took it without hesitation. He couldn't help. The girl flat out said, our job is to take in kidnapped kids and keep them safe. And then she paused, because there's one problem. They had zero clue what to do, until the girl's biography hit, and she had to get close to the main character, so the girl pressed, do we really not know each other? And he answered, no, we. The girl literally leapt onto his bed and squealed that it was soft, and he just stood there stunned, because he had no idea how she even ended up there. The guild's hunt for answers about her would chew up 5 whole days, and he told himself, 5 days, I can survive. He figured he'd better dig into his staff and production. Everything was stacked on his plate. Then the hero slowly. A tiny girl lay sprawled on him, and he couldn't stop wondering why. Then she asked. She woke up feeling the main character's mana and sent him a bright good morning, and he shot back a good morning too, then froze, wondering what was really going on with her. The guy greeted him and asked how the production was going, and the man said the experiment was flying. Then he cut himself off and snapped that the hero was way too young to. Kaidi told him the girl was snatched by bandits and lost her memory, and he'd been looking after her while the guild tracked down her path. The girl blurted out, I can fight, and with you, we'll be stronger than the green uncle. The man demanded, who are you? And the protagonist snapped back that she was talking about Magi S. He's only a B-rank adventurer, but when he last sized her up, she didn't have a single scrap of combat skill. The main character shot back that, yeah. Once the man heard me, he decided to vanish for a while, and that cracked him up, while the girl started to grin and say, if I'm The man gestured to the stove, and the hero's face lit up with pure joy as he circled it, studying every side like it was a treasure. Something felt wildly wrong, so he demanded to know if it was a gas leak. Part of it was simple. He fired up an abandoned old furnace after giving it a quick rebuild, and if the experiment. The protagonist had already poured money into the experiment, then snapped, asking the man if he could still stretch the budget, because he had no clue what the materials would cost. The man just. She snapped around, jabbed her finger at the material. Mithril glittered. After I checked the numbers, it hit me. These stones really were mithril. The man said someone told him his skills were just okay, but he didn't fold. He knew he could build exactly what. The boy and the girl stood right in front of the stove, and the hero snapped, we've got to fix this gas leak now. Rhea promised she'd do it and begged him to watch, but the guy lunged in to stop her, snapping that the stove was insanely dangerous and ordering her to stay far away. At first, she fought back, then the guy got her to nod, and she agreed to help, doing it right from where she stood, stretching her hands out in front of her. Out of nowhere, the pipe burst back into working order, cracks vanishing right before their eyes. Rhea flashed 2 thumbs up, and beaming with joy practically shouted that it was all her doing. She froze in shock when she saw the girl use magic, because she had zero magic of her own, so he demanded, how? And she simply said, I burned the mithril with magic, then used it to seal the cracks. She beamed and said it was easy, like it didn't even hit her how wild those moves were, while he was still shaken by how strange it felt to save her, until common sense kicked in. He felt totally powerless here and knew he had to school her in logic, so he told her to lock eyes on the mithril. He said that when something's far away, you can't just brute force it into shape. You can't weld it clean. The protagonist leaned in and asked the girl what she thought, noticed the stove was in great shape, and then, boom, a brand. He blurted out that he was thrilled to finally meet him, and that he'd heard plenty about him, too. Then he explained he handled the accounting. He grinned and said it felt great to meet him, and the guy nodded right back. Then he leaned in, dropped all the small. He practically cheered that they'd planned everything before pulling him in. Great news for him. Then he said production still hadn't. With the heat cranked up, the material gets hot enough to purge mithril way faster. Plus, his numbers are wild. Charcoal. So if they can mass produce the stuff, they'll wipe out the old mithril mines without breaking a sweat. Just clear the rocks in that spot and it's done. He wouldn't stop pushing, claiming that one oven could pay for itself in just 10 days, and he insisted it be mass-produced ASAP. And he pressed the man for answers, asking straight up if he'd come to talk. If he can snag even 10% of the profit, he'll be thrilled. Mies told him he'd even covered the technical. He said that, yeah, in this setup, 50% of the profit is basically the norm, and then he leaned in and asked what the main character thinks about it. The protagonist asked for the percentage again, and at first glance he couldn't help thinking, that's way too much. Even though he's pretty sure the merchants have no reason to catch on, he still can't shake the doubt. Anyway, this tech is on another level. He's sure 50% just won't cut it. The guy panics, thinking he's caused yet another misunderstanding, even though he personally feels it's way too much and plans. The man's grin returned. He finally calmed down and he said, let's keep it at this price. He shot back that he understood, and since it all happened in a flash, pure excitement hit him as he wondered what would. She beamed beside the main character, called him by name, and asked where they were heading next, while he just stood there. He was dying to see his staff sword, but polishing it would take an entire day. So he figured if he showed up the same way as yesterday, she'd think he was pushing her, and all of a sudden he hit a wall, nothing to do. So he leaned in and asked the girl if she wanted to go somewhere, and just like that, he yanked her. The girl grinned and said it was an adventure. She wanted to go punch monsters. The guy scoffed that she was way too feisty for something like that. He told her, sure, you can cast spells, but wait until you can actually defend yourself. He pushed again, asking if she was a mage, and she just tapped the decoration in her hair. The guy stared. It unleashes its own magic power to block and erase every attack that dares to hurt the user. If you try to use it with evil in your heart, it turns unrecognizable. Yet with the right push, you can activate it by pouring mana straight into it. He figured if the girl had a hairpin, then she'd be set, especially since he couldn't shake the question of why something like that was at Ria's, and before he could wonder too long, just minutes after she stormed out of the guild, the girl dropped down and started gathering plants. Then suddenly she blurted out what she'd discovered. This time the quest he picked was to grab Fioro grass, a low-stakes F-rank job, the safest mission the guild had on the board. He's going to pull the same move he used to hunt down Zanana grass, crunch the clues, map out everything he needs, and track it all down. Only this time he has to spot just. He wondered if that weird grass was even worth it. Finally he gripped the Fioro herb he needed right there in his hands, and the relief hit him hard. He smiled and thanked. He'd already snagged 7 pieces, and Ria snapped that he was cheating. So the guy blurted out a denial, even as he wondered if he could even stack more skills. Sure, he thinks it's childish, but hey, a match is a match. Suddenly the grass split right down the middle, and he panicked, thinking she'd been The girl had finally cracked the location of the Fioro herb, just like he'd figured it out from the clues, and then Ria shot back that she was only hunting down where the protagonist's magic was packed together. Then something snapped her gaze toward it, and the protagonist hurried over. He spotted a stone needle in the open and immediately snapped to Ria, asking what was wrong, because no monsters were anywhere nearby. The girl shot her hand up and snapped back that he was wrong, monsters were right there. The weapon slammed into the wolf with a perfect hit, red-furred and all, and the guy demanded to know how she found them, and then pressed, is this one of your powers? She said the monsters and the main character's mana were special, so that's why she could track them down, but the obstacles were stacking up and the search was getting harder by the minute. He couldn't help wondering if she had a radar in her pocket. Then she flashed that comparison to monsters, spun the games back to the wolves, and slammed. He said the shot's accuracy was insane, no way he could land that from that far. He blinked in shock and asked if he could fire homing projectiles. Ria shut that down. The boy's jaw dropped. She shot back that it was exactly asterisk. Because of this, she was grunting. She claimed his magic hit harder and moved faster than hers. Then he looked off to the side and thanked her. Kaidi demanded, why'd you fire so fast? And she shot back, because the hero's totally off, he couldn't pull it off himself. He figured that since she came from privilege, she'd call him weird without thinking twice, but a gut feeling hit him. If he could control just one magic, he needed to go check something. The guy hoisted a massive needle over his head and teased the girl. So, how about this magic? Confident he'd just unleashed something unstoppable, he pressed on, and Ria snapped back. She snapped back that it was chaotic magic, and if she touched it, everything would slip. If she had all those perks and was a court sorceress, he figured he'd hit the jackpot too. She'd be paired with a swordsman. He also felt his own magic was an out-of-control mess, while the girl's magic barely even held together. He started imagining this. What if he forged brutal, powerful magic? A pack of red wolves fixed their eyes on them and started baring their teeth with vicious growls, and Ria whipped her head toward them. Ria snapped that a horde of monsters was closing in, and before the girl could ask him, she leaned in and told him he looked genuinely happy, then asked him what in the world had happened. He flashed a happy grin and said it was getting fun, and the girl nodded. She started spinning wildly, side to side, flinging needles as she laughed. He leaned in and asked if she was using mana to fire her magic, yet his eyes caught it. His mana wasn't draining at all, and that mystery. Ria bragged that she was only grabbing the mana the protagonist was wasting, and when he snapped, "Why do you think that?" She snapped back that every particle he blurted out in shock, right then and there. Somehow he leaned in and asked how, since he pours his mana into spells, she could pour his mana into her magic. She answered, straight-faced, that if it was tied to where the magic. He told her that even though she said it like it was obvious, those words snapped something in his head. He realized he was using magic, even though he had no clue about it at all. He asked if he could pull off the same magic control as her if he trained hard, and Ria said it might be possible, then admitted she couldn't feel any magic. She said Kaidi felt like he'd been dropped from a world with zero magic, and the words hit so hard he swallowed hard. He demanded to know why he could cast spells with zero training. Was it pure talent? She told him straight up that if he truly had it, the main character can't tame his magic, but when he's reckless and triggers it anyway, the power still answers him. He nodded and said he got it, because the boy couldn't stop thinking that if she could smash and reshape Mithril with raw magic, then he could fire up his own magic the exact same way. His water and earth magic draw straight from the environment, so if he pumps magical power into the air and mix one crazy fantasy with the world around it, and boom, that's the exact setup that powers up his magic. He couldn't use lightning magic because it didn't exist in the environment as a basic element, and the hero refused to bank on power he couldn't trigger whenever he wanted. The girl snapped back that everything was set, then flicked magic and sent a sandwich sailing into Kaidi's hands. He thanked her, took a bite, and yep, the hero nearly choked on how salty the food was. Then he hauled every dead wolf back with him and demanded a final confirmation. Then the girl gasped, pointing out that the main character hauled in 4,000 stalks of fire grass, and even more than 3. She blurted out all shaky, "Where did you even get that much from?" And the girl shot back, "I helped him too." The guy grinned, convinced that this kind of reaction was about to become a tradition. The girl shot him an apology, spun straight toward him, and said they had to talk, right now, about something involving Ria. The girl jabbed a finger at the sofa, silently begging the heroes to take a seat, then turned to the guy and asked what they needed to talk about, yet he had no clue how to put it. He figures they've probably tracked down the girl's hometown, but the way he clicks with her, then he should kick things off with a conversation. So he asked whether the girl's parents had. She told him they hadn't found a single trace of her relatives, or even her parents anywhere, and the guy pressed her. No city in sight could have spawned those bandits. Yet they swore they found the girl all alone in the middle of the forest. So yeah, her hometown is way across the map, but there's got to be other cities out there where she could have come from. Sure, it's possible on paper, but they all pretty much agreed it's a long shot, and first things first, her guild turned up 0 records of any race that matches Ria's traits. He marched up to her, blurted an apology, and told her. He asked straight up if she'd been dumped because of who she was, and the reply hit him. It didn't look like she doesn't know the full details, but she's adamant that this isn't the reason. Then he just couldn't get what she was trying to say. Still, that girl has way too many secret layers. He snapped his head to her and said, "I know you've lost your memory, but tell me, do you remember anything at all?" Ria couldn't help wondering if it was the spot she stood in, the scenery around her, or something else entirely. She swore she remembered the forest clearly, yet not a single trace of magic was there, like it had vanished into. Now she fired back with a firm answer to every single one of his questions, but not the way a little girl should, because this is. He figured she was older than she looked, maybe even older than him, and then the guy demanded, "So what do we do with her?" The girl snapped back that she was searching for someone to take her under their care, but every door she knocked on stayed shut. Nobody was willing. She warned that if they couldn't find someone, they'd have to leave the girl behind at the shelter, and Ria's stomach dropped in pure horror. She burst into screaming fits, saying she had to be the main character, then snatched him, and the guy stared. The girl begged the hero to take her under his wing, even though she knew it'd be a brutal challenge for an adventurer to look after a little kid. It should have worked normally, but Ria had lost her memory, until she found him with the same kind of special skills, and her thoughts finally clicked into place. Sure, beating weak monsters is fine, but what happens when you find out he's got to drain? She drains his mana so he can't cast a single spell. So if he can't fight back, how will she even manage to? He told himself it'd be fine until he was sure. Even though he felt bad for her, he couldn't let her be a liability. Even so, he still managed to answer, and the protagonist quickly told the girl to pause before this. She told him, sure, he could decide this anytime he wanted, right up until he left for another city. The girl opened her mouth to speak, but the guy cut her off cold. He said he had to explain everything. Then the main character told her he wouldn't leave her. The girl hounded the hero to head straight to the guild today and smash tougher monsters, like Dark Seeras or the... He figured the monsters were already shaking the moment they heard her name, and he couldn't shake the feeling she was trying to earn his trust by proving she deserved it. Still, his only real worry was her. They're about to dive into adventures later, but he's got to reach a more important place first. The hero greeted Sumisa with a bright good morning and started asking how his staff was holding up, until she cut him off and Ria jolted in surprise and asked if he really used a staff, and he shot. She whipped out the staff like a blade and called it a witcher's sword, and that poor guy's jaw dropped in shock. He said it was totally awesome, and the girl grinned back. Yeah, she already knew. Then she demanded to know why it looked like a sword, and Sumisa shot back, is it really that weird? Because the main character, he said his weapon's weight fit him perfectly, and she shot back, why not test that in magic? She stared in shock. This guy had a huge pool of mana, and even crazier, the boy started swinging that sword at anything in his path, and Ria couldn't believe how fast he moved. The protagonist blinked, baffled by how fast it was. Maybe it had to do with the staff's material. With that speed, he could still track the projectile, yet he'd be able. The girl said she was stunned by how he handled it, then blurted, how much mana did you pour into this? He shrugged and replied, not counting the mana I wasted while it sat doing. She shot back that it was the full mana reserve of 5 mages, and then demanded, are you really human? He answered, dead serious. He said no matter what, the staff is incredible, only she could have made it. And she blushed hard and admitted, if you're into it, then I've got nothing else to say. Suddenly, she remembered the fuel store guy was hunting him all over town, and the boy spun toward the man and Mia swept in with a grin, thanking the protagonist for showing up. Then Kaiti leaned in and demanded, so what happened? He told him the production gear was already set, and they jumped into mass production. 10 machines were humming right now, and the other guy was blown away. Maya said they were short on store hands, so he rushed to the coal miner. Thank you, the production shot up, almost doubled. And the guy couldn't stop laughing, because the Coal Miners Association had the kind of name that felt like it. They've got to head to the production site and find out exactly how things are going, so the main character nodded and agreed. Mia's eyes widened at how many dwarves were packed in there, and the guy blurts, so are all these guys from the Coal Miners Association? Mia answered. A man strode up to them, slapped down his claim with confidence, and introduced himself as the chairman of the Coal Miners Association. Then he told them his name. The guy lit up and said he was thrilled to meet him. The girl stepped forward and announced. He told him, we've got to talk about something big, and before anything else, he made sure to thank him for saving his life. The protagonist shot back asking what he meant, and the man said, since you're not from around here, I'll explain. He then warned that a strange disease had just spread. The moment they heard his name, they felt safe again. The guy figured the sickness might have spread from the mines because the place was packed. He was told it was nausea and a migraine, same symptom. He said it was a miracle nobody got complications or died, but even so, they still couldn't function. He demanded how anyone could fight that disease, and the man shrugged. It's simple, stay away from. He figured he'd better stay resting almost all day, because now nearly everyone's been knocked out, and he spun toward the man and asked straight up if he wanted that guy to handle the disease and wipe out its cause for good. He shot back that he'd help them big time, then fired off a request to the guild. No one had ever gone that far, but if the girl pressed the guy on whether they were gonna beat those monsters, he snapped back no. Ria fumed that they wouldn't let her fight, and when the guy asked if she was scared, she snapped her finger. The guy snapped his gaze to the man, and the man answered with a clear yes. Then they hauled him away, mostly because the body count was already too massive to ignore. The protagonist pressed the girl, where does your magic leak? And she smirked, saying her power felt just a little off, then pointed straight at the guy beside them, like he was the reason everything had shifted. The boy didn't catch what the girl was pointing at, but that dwarf's face went oddly pale, so the boy fired off the appraisal skill. It flashed his condition on the screen, magical overload, like his body couldn't handle too much mana. He was finally getting the full picture when the man barked a question at his subordinate. The man told him to stop burning himself out and get some rest, and deep down he felt it. No matter how young she was. He demanded to know why he hadn't brought the girl along for the investigation. Because if monsters, she said she'd be okay, and so would the main character. If Rhea promised they'd be fine, then he figured they could just fall back if things went. He watched her move like she was flying and couldn't stop wondering, was that one of her skills? If she really could pull that off, then retreating would be effortless if things... They marched straight up to the mine's entrance. Right in front, a warning sign slapped the truth on them. Beware of coal mine disease. The boy begged the girl to tell him if she'd spotted any monsters, and she nodded, ready to report back. Those walls are going to make it brutal for her to track them down, but she's not backing off, while the guy completely ignored the fact that the walls blunt her detection. So in his mind, he spotted the girl and asked if there was something underground. Then she froze, shocked, and demanded he repeat it. Rhea admitted she could feel that careless vibe getting stronger deep underground, and she couldn't believe she hadn't caught it sooner, while the guy just smirked and said thanks to his radar. 30 centimeters of dirt sat between them. Then that was all he could manage to say before his brain screamed. Hand in hand, they threw themselves into the hunt, battering through danger to crack the mine's secrets, because the girl and the boy could cast magic. The boy slammed into something solid and demanded what it was, and the girl snapped back that this section was totally different from the rest. Rhea swears it's an old building from the past. Then the guy keeps badgering her, asking if it's really ancient ruins or something like that, and Rhea shut. Once she hit him with that, he couldn't wait to try breaking her, so he told her, step back, and when she asked if he was going to use magic, she backed away without hesitation. The boy blasted a hole straight through the floor, and Rhea snapped, "Are you human?" He shot back. Now that he's doing it for the first time, charging his magic right in front of a girl, she decides he can't be human, and he snaps back, calling her impudent. The boy unleashed pressure magic and started carving a path ahead, yet the walls never crumbled. The main character gaped. There wasn't a single scratch on the wall, and he couldn't believe how tough it was, just like the girl had promised. Just as the boy's thoughts were roaring ahead, the floor snapped and cracked, the girl screamed, "Careful," and the whole place started falling apart beneath their feet. The heroes started dropping one by one. Rhea snapped that it was too much weight, too much. The boy begged her to let him down so he could find a way to land, and she nodded. The protagonist kept dropping and realized the bottom was nowhere in sight, while the radar flashed the grim truth. He'd slam into the ground in just 15 meters. He had to snatch every last stone before they hit him, 3 seconds flat, and the countdown blasted to life, and the protagonist dropped into place on his feet, no injuries at all. He felt totally fine and figured he'd gotten stronger. She asked if he was okay, then bolted over to him, and he quickly said, "Yeah." The place was pitch black, so he demanded to know if she had magic that could light it up. She grinned and said she did. They strode through the room, and the guy's mind latched onto how huge and hollow it felt, just empty space and bare walls. The girl said they might be inside the publication, then the protagonist. He fired the question at her, was this place where the magic was born? Rhea could only guess. He thought they'd hit the jackpot, but now the only goal was to break free and rush back to report everything. He was racking his brain for a way out, and the main character shot the girl a question. Could she just fly them out? But she shook her head. Kaidi even believed she was just gliding on jet propulsion, until she ran into a nasty little altitude ceiling. He leaned in and demanded to know what she thought about him using magic. The girl snapped back. She said the main character can't control it, and if he lifts her even slightly too hard, she could die. The protagonist pushed for a new exit and demanded to know where the carelessness hit hardest. The girl blurted that she wanted a fight, so Kide snapped. She said a giant was nearby, and then she pointed straight at the guy himself. The moment those words landed, rage exploded in him. Then he spotted the hole they'd tumbled through, and his stomach dropped. Turns out they'd been circling in place the whole time, and the girl nodded. He figured the building was a cube, but when he looked closer, it was just endless walls. The main character and his girlfriend stride down a long wall, racing toward the gate, and the hero just stands there in front of it, waiting until they finally open. The girl stares at the gate like it's staring back and tells the main character she's with him, but this stretch of wall hums with a weird kind of power. while the young man watches. The girl's companion suddenly spots it and declares, "That's the wall." She's sure it's the one they need, nothing about. Kairi Suzumiya mutters that it's like a door hiding as a wall, and then it hits him. His radar can't spot a single thing behind that door. He takes a deep breath and makes his move, strides to the gate, and insists this door has to open somehow, while his companion stares him down and the young man snaps back, "Yeah." He leans in, eyes locked on the door. His companion shrieks for the sesame to open, and with that excited scream, she warns that letting it happen could spell real trouble, and the protagonist gets it instantly. Suddenly, a wild buzzing snaps his attention, and the young man whips his gaze over his own eyes, then stares straight into the darkness beyond the open door. Right after that, a massive flock of unfamiliar monsters bursts out of nowhere, screaming through the monsters are armored wasps with a death wish. They stop dead in midair, freeze like statues. Complaints come flying straight at the main guy and his companion, and the moment he realizes what's coming, suddenly the stings cut out, right in midair they freeze, like the world just held its breath. The protagonist can't even process it because he's still slammed. The blades slam into the ground with a brutal crash, and the young man freezes in shock. Then he stares. The monsters lurch back to life, and the protagonist shuts down the urge to think, because this is not the moment. He decides these monsters have to die first, and the young man barrels straight at them, gripping him. The young man whips his weapon around and slams down hard, cutting his opponents to pieces. After smashing the monsters that were scaring the heroes, the young man rushes up to his companion and blurts, "Are you okay?" She gives him a shaky smile, insists she's fine, and quickly apologizes. He blurts out that he's just relieved she's okay, and the protagonist immediately presses him. "So it's true, you stopped those needles." The girl shakes her head and insists, "No, it wasn't me." Her companion jabs a finger at the main character and declares, "He did it himself." The young man freezes, pure shock, and the hairline snaps back and says these things, "Magic is barely anything." Then the second they close in, their power just fizzles away. Kid Suzumiya watches the young man grin and call it a pitiful sight. Then the girl out of nowhere, the heroine's voice turns deadly serious, and she snaps that these monsters feel off to her too. The comrades spot the debris under their boots, scraps left behind from the monsters the young man just hacked apart, and they're shaped like some kind of magical instrument. The protagonist studies every detail, and his verdict hits hard. These monsters are magical tools built to wipe out invaders. The guards, they're the floating eyes, and that. So yeah, the building turns out to be an ancient ruin. When the protagonist finally clocks, the young man flashes a grin, then it hits him. That door's secret. Kairi Suzumiya and his companion lean into the darkness, and the protagonist whispers that nobody has a clue what kind of monster might be crouched behind that door. He turns to the girl and asks if they should head back, then it hits him hard. Even if they return, they won't make it home. He knows things are worse. He scans the dark with sharp focus, then right in front of him, a door swings. The protagonist says he searched every room, following those rules to the letter, and the girl nods, leaning in and studying the inside with sharp, careful eyes. The young man swings his gaze forward and realizes there are 8 fresh doors hiding behind that one, but the rooms beyond them are in full chaos. Dozens of hovering guardians circled this place, but every route to the magical energy, and even the eggs. The main character stepped up to the inscriptions and the words screamed, "Research Center." The young man blurts out, totally confused, "So what do we do next?" And then, right in the dark, a blinding flash. The girl barrels ahead of her partner and drops down the spiral staircase while the protagonist creeps after her. The stairs stretch forever, and every step down drags on like it'll never end. Just as the hero hits the ground, the young man's eyes snap to something out of nowhere. He stares ahead and snaps that there's another door right in front of them, then points at the huge words on it. The hero steps up, reads the inscription, and realizes it's a warning. Unauthorized people will be eliminated. The protagonist realizes you're basically a walking warning sign. Then he smirks and tells you that behind the store, it gets even worse than here. He says he wants to use a potion on Togo to pump his courage, but the girl snaps back asking what difference that even makes, what monster. The protagonist snaps, no more handing people to monsters, because he's determined to dig a way out of this pit, it looks like they're not walking out of here without a fight. So the young man snaps at his companion to stay sharp, and the girl nods. The protagonist reaches out and slams his hand on the door. The door swings wide, and the heroes stumble right up to the edge of the room like something about to blow wide open. Blades slice through the air straight at the couple, and the protagonist's mind reels, because of course another guard is already waiting for them. The main character slams through the attack again and throws himself in front of the girl, shielding her with his own body. In a flash, he shoots you a question in his head. Did the enemy land a hit? He remembers the moment before those attackers' needles dropped as they closed in, but something is different now. The girl blurts that the monsters aren't alone, and the protagonist instantly freezes in pure horror. It carves out space around itself. Monsters burst out of them like they're hunting for you. Among all of them, there's even a brand new species, wolves, only stranger. The young man stares them down, then blurts out that the hovering guards have changed colors, and the mechanical tops scare him even more than before. Among the fresh batch of monsters, a massive flying snake drops in from the sky, dwarfing every other threat, and the main character fires up, ready to shield his partner. The girl snaps that she feels ignored by her, but that isn't even the biggest problem here. The monsters surge in and launch their attack. The main character yells at his friend to run, do whatever she can to save herself. She whips around to the protagonist and demands a stone spear. The protagonist scrambles to match the pace, but his feet skid on the floor. The young man hurls himself into action, snapping the attention. Their companion stares the whole battle down with ice-cold focus, refusing to blink until the exact moment hits when they can finally. After all that waiting, she finally unleashes her stone spear technique at last. The monsters keep surging forward, closing in on the main character and his partner with every heartbeat. The girl is absolutely terrified, eyes wide as she stares at those nightmarish creatures in pure horror. The young man leans in and asks if his magic will work on them, praying that with her help he can finally shield them from the invasion. The girl screams that one of the monsters is sprinting right after him. It turns out the monster is actually a wolf-like creature, fully armored. He stops cold, unsure if those are really robots, but the silence around them is bone-chilling, so he snaps out. Since magic won't. The young man digs deep, clenches every ounce of power into his fist, and smashes his opponent with the ball. The protagonist slams his sword into the ground with a thunderous clang. He can tell his opponent is brutally strong, but the truth is, this young man isn't as easy to read as he looks. The young man goes all in and carves his opponent clean in half. He stands over the fallen enemy, triumphant, and tells him that the one thing his witch's sword can't stop is that he's still got. Sure, he could slice through every opponent with ease, but he doesn't even need magic. Nobody knows what that metal really is. The protagonist fires off an assessment skill. He learns the truth. This is Category 2 Infantry Anti-Magic Steel. Those crystallized magical particles wipe out any magic on contact. So yeah, his opponents can fully block magic, and it probably shuts down every magic tool in this room. She whips around to the young man and demands they get as many stone copies as they can. Because if they the girl flings stones into the sky, and they burst midair, erupt. The young man keeps slashing forward, roaring as his sword chops down every opponent in his path. He tells everyone he's finally ready to lock in on the wolves. But there's one huge mystery still stuck unsolved. And this massive flying snake keeps clawing at his piece. Then it swoops back into view, right beside the young man, lifting that enormous tail like it's about to strike. He already knows what's coming next, so he whips his head to his partner and tells her to jump. The snake whips its tail down and slams the ground hard. Everything sitting on the surface at that exact moment shoots upward like it just got kicked by fate. The main character and the girl pull off the jump together. Once the chaos finally dies down, they touch down on solid ground and land cleanly, smooth as silk. The main character snaps, asking his friend why that snake is so damn strong, and she doesn't even guard the magic tools she's meant to protect. She teams up with the heroes and wrecks everything. His partner whips around and blurts that the snake is lining up another brutal super attack, and the young man freezes, staring in pure horror. That snake is totally gearing up for something huge. Some parts of her torso can pop off and detach. The main character stares at it all, then snaps, "This is so messed up, this is just awful." He yells at his partner to fall back, then pushes them to sprint harder. A young guy and a girl sprint straight toward an open door, like freedom's right on the other side. They grit their teeth, strain every muscle, and sprint with every ounce of power they've got. That flying snake proves how deadly quick it is. Before the heroes can even scream, it rockets ahead and snaps right onto them as terror hits. A massive chunk of iron rockets toward the heroes, swerves just enough, and slams down to block their way, right as the young man and girl freeze in terror, staring at the main character snaps that this is absolutely, totally, miserably bad. Meanwhile, the flying snake slammed through the door, and with no place left to run, the heroes had exactly one choice: stand their ground and fight. Flying guards thunder overhead, buzzing so loud it feels like they're right in your ears. Metal wolves swarm the heroes from every direction, closing in from all sides at once. The protagonist locks eyes with the truth and growls that the only thing left now is to smash his opponents. He knows they've got to deal with this snake, but his dream alone won't save them. So the young man whips around to his partner and asks, she claims snakes have wings too. Then the young man whips around, panic written all over his face. The heroine fires back that you can knock the snake right to the ground by tearing its wings apart. Then she smirks. The young man nods along, eyes locked on hers, and promises he'll unleash a fireball. The young man leans in and demands the girl tell him when his sword's power will find. Smoke billows through the whole room, swallowing every corner in seconds. The main character forces himself to steady his nerves and clamps down on the sword, like it's the only thing holding him. The girl yells that this attack has to be Togo's cue for a real knockout-worthy hit, and the young man answers, "Got it." The main character slams his opponents with a crushing strike that burns through 700 mana points. The young man somehow blasts a massive fireworks ball into the sky. The snake snaps back and starts folding its wings into hiding. His girlfriend shrieks that she's forcing them inside her, right now. The hero can't look away as the young man's attack detonates, and the blast swells into something. Flames ripped through the air and swallowed everything around. The moment it hits, anxiety and wild excitement slam into him at the same time. The flames finally latch onto the snake and start slowly eating away at its body. The protagonist stares it down, clocking that the blast had enough power to rip her wings apart. Yet something went. The heroes spot something off in the distance. The young man snaps his head toward his girlfriend and asks if she can control him herself this time. Then she shakes her head and tells him she can't. He realizes that Fireball's fate is on him alone, but the girl leans in and tells him the power has to be cranked up 20 times. The protagonist nods along and tells her, "We'll do it." Then the young man leans in and pleads. Meanwhile, Smee is in full-blown rage, pushing to grab the main character and his girlfriend. The girl fires off her techniques at Togo, buying herself precious seconds to stall him, so the young man can set up for the... Meanwhile, the main character whirls midair, driving his blade into the perfect. His silhouette vanishes into a roaring cloud of smoke. To go after the hero's snake, they burst out of the smoke like a strike from nowhere. The young man's face screams confidence, and the protagonist is locked in, trying to beat his opponent. He claims he's still collecting the magic power for the spell, but every magic tool is... The floor starts giving way under his feet, but somehow he twists out. The heroes realize that if they keep this same drive rolling for a little while longer, but the main character can't shake that gnawing anxiety, Then, out of nowhere, stones start crashing down right. He whips his head around to see what he just washed away. The young man snaps his eyes to the ceiling and swerves in pure horror. Then his companion blurts, "What's happening up there?" She jerks her head up, and the horror hits her like a punch. The young man and his crew lay eyes on it, and the ceiling starts to split at the seams. Deep cracks explode. The protagonist spots the snake wrecking the wall, and his mind snaps to the next danger. Why would the ceiling start collapsing? Then it hits him hard. The ceiling has... He snaps his head to his friend and screams that they're about to be buried alive. Then the protagonist fires back. The young man blares out that this won't work either. He straight up has no time left. He can't even finish his thought before something massive and heavy slams down onto the floor. The main character fights tooth and nail to stay from drifting off to the side. He whips around to his girlfriend, asks how she's feeling, and whether everything's really okay with her. Through the air, you catch the haunted stare in your partner's eyes, turning glossy with tears, while she fights for the young man scans his surroundings with sharp, watchful eyes. Right then, the ceiling starts to give way, and he screams the rest of his words to his girlfriend as it crumbles down. The girl gasps in horror and blurts out what they're supposed to do next, and the young man, he says, "When it comes down to it, we can't waste this chance." And then the snake's rage doesn't quit. It lashes out and strikes inches from the main character's side. The young man sprints with everything he's got, weaving and slipping aside so fast, the girl grips her companion with white-knuckle force. The protagonist finally clocks the terrifying truth: no intersections anywhere, and the young man, breathing hard, the young men keep sprinting down those stairs, praying that the next step. The girl, our hero, dashes to the wall and clutches it tight with her arms. The young man's blood turns to ice as he realizes they've slammed into it. The main character whips his head back and realizes the snake is closing in at an inhuman warp-speed sprint. She's not just close, she's blasting through the sky straight at the heroes, ready to strike them the moment she gets there. He swears he'll fight to the end and shield his girlfriend with everything he's got, but then he thinks he can claw his way back to the stairs by pushing through that shattered door, but he panics. If he all this time, that girl kept staring at him with heartbreak in her eyes. She flashes a look across her face, and before you can even blink, she's already gearing up to vanish into another world. His girlfriend yells at him to blast her a fireball. He fires off a question, "Do you have a plan?" And the protagonist snaps back that she stared him down and said, dead serious, "Even if that's the case, I'm doing what I planned, I'm going through with it." The young man realizes the heroine doesn't really have a plan either, but there's no time to dwell on it. Cornered with no escape, the main character swallows his doubts and agrees to back up his friend. The girl clenches every muscle, forcing magic out of her own body, and with each heartbeat she finally manages to pull it free. She struggles through it, and then a blazing magical light finally bursts out of her. The heroine yelps in panic, saying she can't handle this power, but the young man stares in shock as he realizes the heroine's built-in magic is shutting down. In his head, he's screaming that this is way too dangerous and she has to stop right now, so he turns to his girlfriend to help her, but she cuts him off instantly. The hero never cracks a smile, she just says adventures are fun, and then she leans in and asks, "So don't you think so either?" The young man stares at her in shock, but he can't fight it anymore, and he has no clue what's happening. She's convinced this is just courage talk, but she throws it out anyway, so he won't come bothering her. The young man flashes a grin, shakes his head like he disagrees, then finally the girl masters her magic, gathers herself, and launches an attack at the flames roar around the heroes, devouring everything in their way. His companion shrieks Winston's cry and hurls a flare ball straight at them. A monstrous fireball burns overhead, hanging in the air like the sky just decided. The main character fires up his friend, screams at her not to quit, and pushes her to keep moving only forward, because he's sure. The snake snaps into action, charges straight at the heroes, and throws its mouth wide. Its fangs flash like blades in the dark. The protagonist keeps blasting encouragement at his friend, yelling at the top of his lungs for her to do it. She digs deep to the very edge, jaw clenched, and still keeps the magic under. A colossal fireball rockets straight at the snake, scorching the air as it closes in. Once it finally lands on its target, it erupts into flames and starts devouring it piece by piece. Exhaustion hits her like a wave, and the girl crumples to the ground. The moment it happens, she bolts forward to back her up. Then the young man clenches his resolve and goes in for the final blow. He rockets up toward the snake and drives his sword straight into its head. The young man realizes the sword sinks in way deeper than it should, and he knows it's because the metal around the snake's head is brutally strong. The main character snaps back to one thing: this shot was forged and handed to him by his friend, so he knows he can't afford to let it slip away. The young man screams at himself not to blow this chance, then drives his sword again and again into the snake's head until it's riddled, while a thunderous barrage of explosions erupts in the air, shaking. The defeated snake drops to the ground, and the main character rockets off it He slams down like a shadow, and the enemy crumples at his feet. Then the snake's head gets blasted into ash by his fire, with the brutal damage he dealt clearly showing. Rage burned in his eyes as he stared down his beaten opponent, and that victory finally cost him everything. He was completely drained. Behind the young man, a song spills into the air while he gasps for breath after that brutal fight. The young man whips around and spots the girl, and his girlfriend immediately. The young man steps up to her and she blurts out, "So you really ate lunch, huh?" They march past the fallen snake and the young man blurts out to his friend, "Do you feel that carelessness in the air?" She hesitates, not sure, but her gut tells her the room is still crawling with it. The girl flashes a sweet smile and tells him she's certain everything will vanish within a week. The kid grins like he's about to burst and shouts, "We did it." Then he snaps, realizing just how brutal the road ahead would be. The young man let out a beaten down. The protagonist drops to the ground and tells the girl to rest first, and just like that, she sinks down beside him too. The main character whips his head toward his friend and spots the hairpin in her hair. She looks anything but special, yet she still landed one of the biggest roles in this battle. The young man snaps that the girl put them both in danger, praying the magic won't spiral out of control, then demands, "How do you feel?" And the heroine shoots back. The girl bursts into laughter and says, "Everything turned out fine, didn't it?" Then she pauses, eyes bright. The young man smirks and jokes that if every adventure hits this hard, he's going to need to pray there's no next time, because at this rate, he won't last long. The heroine flashes a smile and the young man gets a quick yes. Then the girl calls. She can't stop wondering, will he actually take her with him next time? With cunning eyes, the main character smirks like he knows something, then lets out a slow, knowing sigh. He tells her that after what happened, she proved she can fight back. He refuses to stop anyone from having adventures, no matter if they're a little girl, as long as they've got the right skills, and he reaches for his girlfriend's hand and tells her they'll travel together from now on, just friends. At first, the girl glances at him with shaky timidity, then snaps into stunned disbelief. Her awe is so obvious she can't hide it. Then a bright, childish grin blooms across her face. The girl says yes and leaps straight into his arms. After he and his friend tore into that dangerous place, his power shot up, and he knew he had to report what he'd found fast. The protagonist hoists the girl onto his shoulders, and like it's a secret from a legend, tells her these are magical tools he dug up in the underground ruins while chasing the miner's disease. Yet she ignores every word. The protagonist marches up to two girls, and they fire back. One heroine swears this magic class is exactly what its name promises, E-rank monsters level. Then the next girl unveils blue, and there they are, monsters that look just like wolves, all tagged as rank B, and they've got a chilling name. The girls press them, asking, "Is it really true you wiped them all out?" That young man's towering build steals the room, then he seats his girlfriend at the table. The heroine stares at it in total shock, like her world just flipped upside down. The crowd swarms around the snake you just crushed, staring in shock, and they fire questions at you. What kind of wings are those? Because they have. The protagonist declares these are every magical instrument they crushed. The girls lean in and ask if it's true. Did his partner really fight too? Then they can't stop gushing over how the hero cracked a problem that would have stumped any other adventurer for days. They throw their heartfelt gratitude at the hero, thanking him for everything he's done. They'd never laid eyes on anything like this huge artifact. It was on a whole different level. One of the girls claims that during the raid on the ruins of Foderin, she could recall every single artifact. So if she doesn't even know, the protagonist admits the Gilb is clueless too, and with his brand new skills, he should have been able to read him. So why couldn't he? He puts his assessment skills to work. The protagonist realizes this thing is a prototype, an honest-to-God medium annihilation cannon. He thought it through and boom, he realized it's actually a snake. Before he headed back, he tore through the ruins one more time. He realizes if the girls learn he knows about their family, he's dead in the water, so he clamps his mouth shut, but Kira's yammering on and on about how massive this artifact is. Then they turn on him and ask. The hero grins and confirms it, then swings his tail and chops those metal wolves down, left and right. The young man claims he slaughtered around 30 wolves, but that snake probably wrecked far more than he ever did. So the girls stare at their eyes. One of the girls argues, if we can take down that many opponents, then we're just as strong as real rank. She's convinced that the snake belongs to the same rank too. Then the heroine, still dozing on the young. Then the explanation keeps going, and it feels like they're about to stamp the hero as a B-rank adventurer. Because B-rank isn't just skill. The young man suddenly gets this wild feeling that he's just pulled off something absolutely. The main character spots one of his acquaintances and calls out to him. Then the guy snaps his head around. The young man leans in and says the miner's sickness is finally dealt with. He even adds they wrapped it up 3 days ago. The men stare daggers at the heroes of bewilderments. One of them stares in total shock and blurts out, "Wait." After he turned in his report, the conversation instantly shifted to drilling into a specific substance. The big discussion was all about stopping tech leaks, boosting production, and right on cue, his kingdom is about to start selling it. They paid that tech fee, and the protagonist couldn't shake the feeling that this revolutionary power would completely flip the country's future. Right in the middle of his thoughts, the main character slams on the brakes, realizing the scale is way too massive to handle. He was meant to team up with the kingdom for negotiations and handle the business from the capital, but instead he tossed the profit share to the Coal Miners Association and dumped every responsibility on them. He's still out there adventuring, and his journey hasn't even come close to ending yet. Man, the week just vanished. Those talks with the Coal Miners Association went through clean. Then the moment the young guy told the guild, compared to the giant stories people talk about on a national scale, this one barely even makes a dent. A young guy steps up to a girl, lines in, and asks her about a hair. He can't believe it. When they finally left the ruins, she was pitch black, so why did she suddenly light up again? The girl grins and says it's all because of the magical power. It usually took her around 30 years to build up the charge, but this time, it only took a couple of days. The young man forces an awkward smile, then can't stop himself from wondering what kind of nuclear mana he's even gotten. He can't stop thinking, what if he aims the magic straight at her instead? Could he charge that hairpin way faster? But she snaps, no, it'll break. A mysterious heroine bursts into the room and blurts out a sincere apology for making everyone wait. The girl announces that every last trace of magic has been stripped from. He whips around to his partner and asks if she really needs the armor, and she shakes her head. Nope, it's just too heavy for her. The girl walks in and asks, are we heading to another city? The young man hesitates, then says, I'm thinking about it, but for now, we'll just stick to the road and see. An awkward silence hits, like the whole room just froze. His friend suddenly feels something lurking behind him, spins around in a panic. Out back, there's nothing weird at all. He's just calm as ever, loading the bags like it's no big deal. The girls grill the young man and he just shrugs it off. saying he felt like something was missing. He blurts out what happened, and his girlfriend snaps back that the magic background vanished. The protagonist couldn't believe what he was hearing. He couldn't even guess who pulled off that magical overload, but the power hit him so hard he felt it in his bones. This magic has to be unreal. But he can't claim that because in this world, nobody can craft a spell this massive. He's got this gut feeling, something that's stronger than a flying snake just got shut off. Can he finally piece together what went down behind that mountain? The young man swivels toward Sumishi and fires off a question. She leans in and asks if the young man truly wants to go there, and the girl exhales smoke, warning him that a deadly labyrinth lies on the way. The young guy grins and tells him, "All right then, if that's how it is, we're headed for." His fighting spirit surges to life, and he declares that this is how they'll crank up the fun even more for both of them. The girl flashes a bright smile, practically buzzing, because new adventures are finally about to begin. The unknown girl smirks and says she already knew he'd spill those exact words. The protagonist was the youngest guy his girlfriend ever trusted to go full-on real adventure mode, so together they ditched Herrera. 3 hours after takeoff, the chaos starts to unfold. A young man and his girlfriend hang upside down in midair. Suddenly, the main character senses something off and whips around to look back. The main character whips around to his girlfriend and asks, "Are you okay?" And she simply replies, "Yeah, I'm fine." That young man blurts out, "She doesn't look tired at all. She's probably just bored, that's all." From all that non-stop levitation, he's convinced it's got no nasty side effects, like not a single one. He figures it's because she's tapping into his discharged. At this speed, they're gonna hit that designated point in just minutes. The protagonist's friend spots the monsters up ahead and grins as he blurts the good news to him. The young man blurted out the brutal idea. He said she killed him. He tried to race into the city as fast as he could, but somehow it all went wrong. A towering wave of monsters slams into their path, blocking. A massive horde of monsters slams into his path, blocking every step. Then the girl turns, stunned, and stares at them like she can't believe her eyes. The protagonist admits he's changed his mindset, then declares it's warm-up time. The heroine braces to strike, and both comrades charge straight at the monsters. The heroes and the massive crowd charge straight at each other, closing the distance in seconds. The moment they clash in the middle, blood flies and chaos erupts. The protagonist barks at his girlfriend to strike, not to end them, and she nods along, then demands, "Why do we have to do it this way?" The young man snaps, "Can't she see? Those monsters look delicious, and if we don't wipe them all out, what a total waste." The heroine blurts, "Are you edible?" And when the woman admits she's never, he realizes that crab-looking doesn't mean edible, and he immediately taps into his assessment skill to confirm what's safe. During the evaluation, the main character suddenly realizes he can actually get. He's over the moon until the girl shrieks that monsters are closing in from the other side too. Suddenly his gaze snaps into something sharper. Meanwhile, the hero strides toward a bunch of nasty brown cockroaches. Sure, they're edible, but they look so gross you can barely. The young man stares at them, and pure horror hits him like a punch. He leans in and tells his girlfriend, "All right, we're leaving now." The girl demands, "Why are we running? The enemy looks weak," and the protagonist snaps back, "Because we've totally spoiled his appetite." I keep going without stopping, and the young man finally catches his breath. Relief hits him hard. They finally step into the city they were chasing. Then the young man can't shake the weird feeling that hauling a kid along on this trip is anything but normal. A uniformed man blocks their path and blurts that the roads are crawling with monsters now. Then he asks if they're okay. The young man says it's just a low-rank monster, but he refuses to believe they're pushovers. The young man leans in and says, "Look at the guests' weapons. These are no weak hitters." He realizes even blacksmith adventurers can tell his Witcher sword is weird, so he admits they can He finally blurts out what happened, because he can't wrap his head around why monsters are swarming all over the city. The man hesitantly blurts that this city is ringed by 4 monster-filled forests, and just lately creatures started slipping out of one, so they scrambled to flee straight into the neighboring woods. But when you really think about it, every monster the heroes ran into was heading the exact same way. The protagonist presses, "Do you know why they're migrating?" And the young man shakes his head, admitting he's clueless, then whispers that the guild has the real answer for sure. But they didn't roll out some high-level team, so he shrugs it off like it's no big deal. Then the young man lets out a laugh. The protagonist can't shake the feeling the guild is hiding something, because the metal lizard showed up, then he tracked the bandits to their... While the young people are busy chatting, the main character's girlfriend is bouncing around them like she can't stay still. She lunges into her friend's arms, shrieks, and demands, "What's going on?" And the young man quickly steadies her, telling her it's just an earthquake by the volcanoes, the kind people... Suddenly everyone's noses catch a nasty, strange stink, and the young man guesses it's... He says this moment is one of the city's biggest highlights. He stands up and officially rolls out the red carpet for the heroes, declaring, "You're always welcome." The protagonist and his companion sweep their gaze across the streets. This place is packed with ancient ruins and steaming hot springs. "Man, I can't believe there are hot springs out here." In this city, they're rolling in wealth, living in pure luxury. But one night in those hot springs costs several times more than in their old city. Even so, the hero gets it. Right there in the hotel, gorgeous, cozy rooms are waiting, just like the deal promised. He scans the space with sharp focus and spots 3 rooms branching off, plus a full kitchen right there. He whips around to his companion and asks, "Can you cook crabs with magic?" He's practically vibrating with excitement to taste them, and the girl beams and agrees without hesitation. A young guy lanes in, eyes locked on every move as the food comes to life. Suddenly, one of the crab's claws jerks into motion. But just as the hero is locked in, something pulls his attention away, and he doesn't even realize it. The young man shoots up, sure another earthquake is about to hit, and he yells at the girl to scoot away from the pot before she gets splashed by boiling water. The young man can't help but smile because she's finally gotten the hang of levitation. Once the crab came out cooked, the comrades dropped to their seats and dug in, while the main character raised a cheer and shouted, "Bon appetit." The young man swung his blade and smashed open the juicy crab. He stumbled onto one of the biggest so pieces. The young man takes one sharp taste and instantly knows something's up. The protagonist can't stop raving about the flavor and how perfectly it's cooked. The protagonist's girlfriend takes a turn too, grabbing a bite of the same thing. She grinned and said it turned out insanely delicious. The young man begs her not to eat it, swearing they'll need it for breakfast. Then he tells her he'll stash the girl is being tortured to her limits, and she's so worn out she almost slips into sleep right there at the table. The girl's there in front of her, and the moment she looks at her, something soft stirs inside the protagonist. Then the girl slips into sleep right after. He tucks the heroine into bed and stays there, watching her sleep soundly. The main character sinks into deep thought, lets out a heavy sigh, and you can feel the weight of it hit the room. Now he has to track down why the magic background suddenly nosedived when they were in that other city. But before he hunts answers, he needs to calm his nerves and get a real night of rest. The young man also remembers they stopped at the springs. Right there, open-air vines hang overhead. Because the cities ran out of fuel and there weren't any vans, he had to make do and gave himself a bath with nothing but a plain water balloon. While his girlfriend was asleep, the main character lets out a long sigh, says the bath feels a bit too warm, but admits, yeah, it's still really nice. Suddenly something snaps his focus, so he swivels around and creeps forward with intense caution. He stops dead and realizes this place has no shampoo at all. Yeah, of course. He figured that strange power had to come from some artifact, and if anyone ever smashed it, it would spell disaster. The young man starts scanning the area, and a fresh, unsettling tremor crawls through the ground under him. The main character's already convinced this is just another earthquake about to hit. Suddenly, he shoots up from the bathroom like something just shocked him. He can't stop thinking about his girlfriend, stranded alone back at the hotel, and a horrible dread. He figures that the quake might have scared the girl, but then she just steadies herself with her hovering. The louder that buzz gets, the more it screams one thing: she's barreling straight toward us. Right as the girl barges into the bathhouse, a young man yells for her. The girl slams into the water right beside him, sending her face shifts again, and suddenly she's fiddling with the rubber duck, while the young man just stares at her, totally baffled. After a while, the girl slips back into bed and lets sleep take her. He looms over her bed, staring down as she seems quiet, only to realize she's actually fallen asleep, and he has to hustle to the guild, because if the heroine wakes up, things will go badly. He commits to the plan, but his heart pleads that the ground won't shake again. Then the hero rushes straight back and heads for the adventure. He asks if he can dig up every last detail of this task. He says he's zeroing in on the artifact, because the real mystery is that massive burst of magical power that vanished without a trace. He tells me it felt exactly the same in Herrera, and the only quest that even connects to that is the investigation into why they migrated into. The young man shrugs and says he has no clue how much the guild already knows, so don't tip them off about the artifact. Then he insists on exploring the forest, and the protagonist shoots back. He's desperate to find out just how much that guild already knows, so he doesn't waste time coming back with things he already knows. Yet the girl, she swallows her pride, apologizes, and admits she knows nothing about the forest either. The main character shot her a stunned look, like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. The breadwinners insist she's just an intern. The young man snaps with disappointment, swivels toward her, and tells her it looks like she's not even bothering to act like a fool. And yeah, they still don't know much, though the whispers say the guilds are. The young man already knows every rumor is true, and the scary part, even the employee doesn't get. The other employees stared back and told him they knew nothing too, so he swallowed his pride, apologized, and he already knows it's tied to the artifact, and when the girl sees him moving that fast, her jaw drops. He pushes for it and swears the forest is hiding something right there in the trees. Right as the dust settles, another woman storms in and demands he stop now. She snaps at him to follow right behind her, and the young man walks out, leaving the intern stunned out of his mind. Then the young guy slides into his. She leans in and asks the young man just how much he really knows about artifacts. The young man nods and says, just like I figured, it's tied to those artifacts. He's convinced she's a. While he was in Erora, the moment he asked his magic-savvy friend what was going on, a weird feeling hit him out of nowhere. The woman pauses, eyes focused like she's guarding a secret, so the info never leaks. She fires off a question about his girlfriend's name, and the young man shoots back the answer right away. The girl keeps saying that name, and suddenly the main character's. The young man blurts out that everything's true, then snaps at you in his head for. The girl grins and tells him, "Yep, it's exactly how I figured it would be." She says a fresh report just landed, adventurers spotted in the air. And yeah, people swear several insanely strong ones touched down. And yeah, there are a few extra volunteers who can get from Herrera to Ardian in a single day, and the heroes even made it in just 3.5 hours, so the woman clearly doesn't know the full story about them. Still, the word races through everything way faster than you'd expect, because in this world there aren't any phones, they hurl information around with magic. Yeah, this is the organization that Kid never wanted to clash with, so he blurts out, "Where's the artifact's info hidden?" And she tells him, only a handful of the cell employees and a few adventurers even know it exists. She tells them they'd planned to spill it to the public, but an outsider yanked the brakes and forced them to delay it, so the protagonist figures the whole secret is being buried on Top's orders. He argues the guild is basically its own power in the world, so if anyone's going to stop them, it won't be a random guy, it'll be a feudal lord with the authority to forbid it. The hero blurts out, "Do we always have to reach outside just to say what we need?" And she answers, "Not always, sometimes we handle it from here, when it's not some urgent situation that demands a rush." The young man shoots a question, "So this whole situation isn't urgent, right?" And the girl immediately nods, confirming it's true. She says they've already nabbed the culprits and put them to death. The protagonist acts like the whole mess is already handled. Then the girl cuts in and says, "If you want to investigate on your own, you've got to follow my rules." She blurts, "Say my name and tell them he's here because of Lasius." She promises, "I'll help you if you need to know anything," and honestly that's the most the hero could ever ask for. Then he replies, "I get it." The young man sprints back home. In the end, he found nothing worth the chase. She insisted the criminals had blacked out the lights, but the monsters kept running the evacuations, so the artifact had to be right there, which meant we finally shut it down and destroyed it. He can't shake the feeling that if he just finds the right path, he'll unlock everything he needs. Next day, the hero and his girlfriend hit the road to battle monsters head-on. The young man snaps, "We're already in the forest where the magic vanished. Today, we hunt every monster we can find while we track down any trace of that artifact." He demands she tell him the moment she senses a monster or any weird magical power, and she nods, ready to back him up. She says that when a magical instrument cracks, it's way tougher to feel than any normal object. The hero figures the artifact just got a little harder to feel now that its magic's gone, and for everyone else that would have been impossible. But when the heroine asks, he nods and plays along, saying it like he's right on the money. He lines in and demands to know which way that artifact has to be destroyed. The girl blurts out that she has absolutely no clue. Powerful magic energy is everywhere around the edge, stacked in strong sources all along the perimeter. The protagonist goes for a wild, radical plan. He searches the entire area for the tasks, and when he pitches it, the girl lights up and happily goes along with him. The hero storms straight into the heart of the forest's darkest depths. Blood-fanged wolves prowl those lands like they own the night. The girl unleashes a burst of magical rays. They sink their teeth into the wolves' hides so they can bring them crashing down. The hunt pays off big time. Right then the heroes spot it. Wild boars, led by a brutal leader, are barreling in fast from behind. They fire back with their own fireballs, so the hero barrels deeper and deeper into the chaos. They've got each other's backs, fighting as one tight team with their trust locked in. The main character locks in, eyes sharp and mind racing, and tries to read the situation clearly, like he can't afford one wrong move. Both heroes locked on perfectly and nailed every intended target. The main character fires off a mental command to himself, wipe out every enemy in the area. Suddenly strange noises crash into his ears. He freezes for a heartbeat. He watches his girlfriend square up to a swarm of monsters, and his jaw drops at just how many are coming at her. He zeroes in on the fight and realizes that the girl is mowing everyone down faster than he can even get close, because to grab each one, he has to creep up to the target and shove it into his inventory, which makes his whole grind painfully slow. He blurts out the idea, "What if we cut the grind with magic, like summoning corpses using magical power?" Then the protagonist tries to pull off the same trick. As he yanked one of the kill monsters free, his hands accidentally dragged out something else, and the main character's courage instantly crumpled as fear hit him. The girl stared at her friend in total disbelief, like she couldn't even believe what she was seeing. She shoots the protagonist a question, "What's he doing?" And he straight up tells her he's trying to drill into his head how reckless his magical control can be. He whips around and tells her, "We can do it, use magic." Then he drags the monster's body straight to him, so he can scoop them into his inventory at lightning speed, but the girl just sighs, "They're so heavy." She whips around and tells the protagonist, "Move faster, grab them quicker." Then the girl tilts her head and asks, "So why aren't you using speed magic?" The young man snaps, "Wait, what kind of magic are you talking about?" It's the first time he's ever heard of it, and he pushes again, asking if she means the magic people use for moving. Just picture it, he only needs to soak his body in mana, and that way he'll power it up and clear it out for good, so the main crew figures they'll try it later. The girl begs him to slow down, she doesn't want him coming at her at full speed. He explains, for safety's sake, that he kicks off with a shaky little acceleration. Then he blurts out that he's using his acceleration magic technique. The girl keeps her eyes locked on her friend, not blinking for a second. The young man stares at the dead silence, then snaps, "Did I pour in too little mana?" And he charges back in to try again. This time, the main character rockets forward at an absolutely insane speed. The girl watches his lightning-fast move, and horror crashes over her. The young man twists in midair, eyes wide, realizing he's losing control and the whole situation is slipping out of his hands. It gets pushed farther and farther away. The main character slams into a tree with every ounce of force he's got. Stepping out from under that tree, he looks like a tornado of disheveled smoke. The hero snaps that this magic is nothing but an annoying inconvenience. Rhea, terrified and totally thrown off, rushes up to Katie and blurts out, right there, if he's okay, because the fear is loud, and the guy, forcing a brave smile, tells her he's fine. He asks if her panic is really about his clothes, because he's right here, safe and sound. Then it hits him, his clothes have a wild feature. They crank up his defense, but they drain mana to do it. Kita's like, "This defense feels so solid, it's on par with armor made of Gowardin leather, the kind he's used to seeing." Pinned against a tree, the boy blurts to Rhea, asking if that armor's magic can still kick in, because he's picturing it might just activate even like this. The girl keeps replaying his question in her head, wondering if magic has always worked, or if it changes depending on the situation. Kita thinks maybe the armor has been running non-stop, gulping down the released PMs the whole time, and he tries to make sense of what he's feeling, point by point. The girl nods along and swears the armor will get stronger with him, which could be a massive advantage when the fight really kicks off. Hearing that, he's left reeling. How on earth could a monster like that horn get even stronger? With total curiosity blazing in her eyes, the girl asks if he knew about that hidden trick in his uniform. Then he scoffs and says he doubts anyone who's ever worn that armor figured it out. He finally gets it, this is why he's still alive. Then he turns to Rhea and asks if he can learn acceleration magic right now, because it might be his way out too. Rhea smiles like she already knows the answer. Just keep pushing, try again and again, and it'll all click into place. While they push deeper into the forest, the boy vows, no backing out, to keep training, carve through monsters, and uncover wild, forgotten corners of nature, and the girl beams with pride for Keed and gladly goes along. Suddenly he sprints straight into a tree and makes the whole moment hilariously chaotic. Then she panics, asks if he's okay, and he brushes it off with a confident, "I'm fine," calming her in seconds. Kita grits his teeth, then surges forward again, charging through the trees and slamming into them once more, over and over, until he finally builds enough momentum to move. The guy clenches his fist to prove he's strong, then confidently declares, "I can do this," and the girl stares at him, shocked, impressed, and quietly worried all at once. The man, like he's scanning the battlefield with his eyes, asks Rhea where the closest monster is, and Rhea goes quiet as she focuses, then thrusts her hand out and points straight ahead. The guy lights up at the clue and charges off in that direction, locked in and ready. As he rockets through the forest, he can finally feel it clicking. That's a good sign, but if he keeps hammering the magic like this, he'll slam into something soon, because once it's active he can't shift directions, and that thought makes his stomach drop. He finally figured out he could switch it on and off in a tight rhythm to stop collisions, hit it, then kill it fast. Suddenly a massive monster looms ahead, teeth bared, eyes locked on him, ready to clash the moment it sees him. The big-eared monster stares deep into the forest, and then bam, a bright flash pops ahead, yanking his attention instantly. Taeda darts from tree to tree, inching closer to the animal without a sound, while the monster clocks him and bolts with raw, instinctive terror. The animal, terrified out of its mind, snaps out a paw to strike, but the guy jerks aside in a blink, ripping through the gap with deadly acceleration magic. He slams a crushing kick into the monster's belly, and the boy can't even contain his grin. He just realized his acceleration magic doesn't just help him move, it turns him into a weapon, and suddenly he's got the upper hand. The monster howls in pain and rockets back to the tree from the guy's brutal hit, while the guy lands clean on the ground, grinning like, "Yeah, watch this," and flashing off his skills. With a shaky little smile, the guy asks the girl what she thinks of his performance, and Rhea, trying to stay fair, admits his moves look off like it could go either way, but he just grins harder and insists everything's fine as long as he can back it up with magic. Just as she started to talk, the girl snapped her eyes forward and saw something ahead. Rhea spots something off and snaps, "Hold up." She senses a wild, strange magic pulse lurking nearby, and the moment the guy hears it, his eyes widen like, this could matter a lot. Huddled behind the bushes, the guys creep toward the source of this unknown magic, and then they spot something so strange, it doesn't make sense at all. Deep in the forest, a huge round plate suddenly swings open, revealing a mysterious image and the secret hidden behind it, and the guy swears it's ancient ruins in Herrera that could turn into a massive breakthrough. The thing looks totally impenetrable, yet somehow reeks of magic, pulling their real curiosity in like a magnet. The girl and the boy stare at the stove, grinning in shock as they finally understand why it matters, and Rhea blurts out that this lid is totally strange, pulling their eyes right to it, while the boy, buzzing with excitement, says there has to be something amazing under there, praising the girl for how perfectly she handled everything and turning their whole wandering into a happy, satisfying finish. The heroes finally cracked open the round slab, and the moment they looked inside, a staircase revealed itself, leading down into something mysterious. Kita and Rhea stare at the stairs, jaws dropping, completely frozen, like the mystery in the air has them under a spell. Later, once they're already at the estate, Lajasan leans forward and asks, with real curiosity, the two heroes sitting across from her whether the forest gave them anything worth talking about, setting off a relaxed, easy conversation. Rhea can't help pouring out emotion. She blurts that this whole thing is honestly boring, trying to crack the tension. Then the guy cuts in mid-sentence, telling her with full confidence to let him explain everything calmly and without rushing. He claims there's a forest entrance, 12 kilometers southwest of here, that got sealed off with something like that same lid, and that clue sparks fresh ideas for them. Then he tells them, when we went down there, we stumbled onto underground ruins. Everything was smashed to pieces. Kita tells them he spotted burn marks on some items, but aside from that, it was mostly worthless scrap metal. Lasisen leans in and admits it. Something was right there, something valuable enough to spark their imagination. He nods and agrees, then says it's an artifact just like the pedestal they're trying to recall right now. He spirals in his own thoughts, convinced this is the exact reason behind that weird phenomenon that hit them during their adventure. Keita goes on to say that while they were trapped in that dungeon, a massive magical stone's remains sat nearby, like it had once been resting on top of the pedestal, and that discovery only opens up even more questions. He says that when they finally checked the pedestal, they realized it wasn't the main thing at all. It was just a subsystem, proving how deep and tangled the whole situation really is. The guy mid-thought says they won't learn anything else from this device, then leans in and swears this place used to be an auxiliary setup, powered by a separate main system that guarded its secrets. The woman across from him leans in and says these strange phenomena only happened because that huge magic stone got disarmed. Then the girl goes completely quiet, hand on her chin, replaying every word like it hit her thoughts like a punch. He mulls it over, thinking, even if she knows something, there's no way she'll hand it over to us. He's sure Laziasin has no clue about this auxiliary object, and after a long, tense silence, the girl snaps her eyes to him and says she's ready to ask him something. She claims he once said the underground ruins weren't just ruins, they were a full-on support facility. With a stone-cold serious face, she presses on, does Kita know, or does Rhea have some secret research gift that's pulling all the strings? It hits the real point, and the guy's fear spikes instantly, while Rhea, trying to dodge any unwanted attention, just keeps her cool and calmly sips from her mug, eyes locked on the conversation. The boy realizes Lacha Asana is right, because they both share that power, and panic sparks in his chest, worried he's revealing too much. Keita is blown away that she clocked his secret from just a few words, and he can't shake the fear that someone somehow shouldn't have figured it out. With her head bowed, she keeps telling him she won't push him for every detail, and somehow that honesty builds real trust between them. Lacia-san blurts that she just wants the full lowdown on the adventurer's abilities, because in an emergency, you need answers fast. She then reminds everyone they already pulled off a huge feat by curing the Herrera mind disease in a short burst of time. And with a sharp look, she suspects someone on her team has top-tier analysis skills and is keeping it totally under wraps. The boy stays quiet, smirking like he knows more than he's saying, and his companion stares at him, shocked that he clocked the mood so fast. While the man worries Laja-san might twist this info to her advantage, the boy can't help but get caught off guard by just how sharp and insightful she really is. The boy lets out a heavy sigh, shuts his eyes, and sinks into deep thought. He figures the only smart move is to tell Laja-san everything he knows and lean on the guild to handle the rest. Then the man straightens up, gathers himself, and answers with a grin. This is his skill backing up every word. The girl flashes a satisfied grin and says she'll quiz him on the route to the ruins later, leaving the conversation wide open, while the guy stares at her, totally confused, trying to figure out what she's really talking about. The girl snaps back saying, I told you this already. Only a handful of adventurers and guild members know anything about what's happening right now. Lashisan smiles with total confidence and tells the party they need to know this too, so they can stay sharp and up to date, and when the guy studies her face, he finally gets how big those words really are. The woman with the glasses tells him, dead serious, I can't say this until I get the green light from top management, and that hits him like a wave of anxiety. Then she begs him to not expect much and to just stay patient. He quickly thanks her for understanding and backing him up, and Kita figures she's choosing to trust him too, because he just opened up about himself. He suspects the answers are buried in some secret info, and all he can do is pray the higher-ups will finally let him spill it, because, in his eyes, the best pick is the biggest ruins around, like the Ordean Labyrinth. The boy perched on the bed stared at Ria with a sharp, curious look and blurted, so what countermeasure was that? What did you come up with for earthquakes? A girl is drifting in midair on a bed, wishing the guy good morning, and he shoots back with a quick joke, calling it a wildly eccentric way to sleep and keeping the banter light and fun. While he strolls through the city, the boy blurts out, Ria, are you okay? Did you hit your head last night? Ria flashes a small smile and insists she's fine, but then admits she really wishes the bed was way higher, even though trying to lift it while she's asleep is next to impossible. He can't believe this could ever work, yet a grin breaks across his face when he hears the sheer hope in her words. Suddenly the whole city started trembling with a deep rumble, and every resident, including our main crew, froze in pure terror. The man clocks what's going on and blurts out, hey, are you okay? Ria lets out a small laugh, says she's already used to it, and the guy's instantly relieved, practically cheering over how tough she is. The girl blurts out, so where are we going today? And suddenly their adventure feels real. Then the boy grins and says, we're headed to the guild to explore the labyrinth. Suddenly a stranger with a kind voice calls out for Keed, and the whole group snaps around to stare at him. The man frowns, totally thrown, and asks what just happened. Then the stranger steps forward, says she works for the guild, and invites them inside to talk, and the guy just stares at her, trying to figure out what her angle is. She strides up to the counter, papers stacked in her arms, and declares that Arkan Fionnason demanded her help, because he needs someone to team up and lend a hand as they explore those newly found ancient ruins. The guy, suspicious of what he just heard, fires back at his companion. Does she know anyone in the guild? The girl shakes her head with a grin, saying she's clueless about the whole thing. The guild worker tells him the reward can be talked over, and that the boy is free to take it, or slam it shut, whenever he wants, and inside, he's buzzing because he's dying to secretly inspect the brand new ruins. Kaida couldn't stop himself from asking if this guy was one of the guild's reps, but the girl shook her head with a sly little smile. The guy starts realizing this person is pushing his candidacy at the absolute worst possible moment. He introduces Lashisan and tells him that she's warned him his whole party needs to know about this too. Clutching the tablet, the boy figures Lashisan is probably behind it, because even if she isn't, he'll still head to the new ruins and chase his luck. He thanks the girl for the info, then promises her he'll find a way to meet her. Kita and Ria marched up to the building looming ahead. Ria stared at it in shock, while Kita, dripping with disdain and a hint of sarcasm, sneered that it was a magnificent tofu house. Ria didn't catch a thing, though. He just asked again, still clueless about the joke. The guy barked at them to move ahead, then Ria snapped to a halt, and she screamed at the guy to stop the moment she saw strange magic leaking out of the door. He braced for a trap and demanded, is this dangerous? She studied the area like a hawk, said, I don't think so, but her doubts lingered. She clocked that it all led back to the door, but the sequence kept slipping away from her eyes, blurred and impossible to piece together. He stared at the woman using a magical tool like it was an intercom, and his curiosity lit up instantly, so he told Ria to stay on full alert, ready for anything strange. Suddenly the door swung wide, and a girl stepped out like she already knew the heroes. Kaida and Ria froze, staring at her with tired, shocked disbelief. The heroes spotted a girl with fox ears and a twitching tail, and she grinned, saying they looked just like she'd heard they did before. Then she leaned in, all curious, and pointed out that their party setup was seriously weird, making the heroes stare at her like, wait, what? What? The boy snapped to it. She wasn't just a fox, she was a beast man, and he never saw this coming. He stared at her and blurted out, are you Fiona-san? With a huge smile and a burst of joy, the girl shouted that it was her, leaving the man even more stunned. He told her he'd heard she nominated him for a private investigation into the recent ruins. Then the fox girl's ears snapped upright, and you could tell she was all in. With her tail lagging behind, the girl grinned and nodded along to what he said, insisting it had nothing to do with the guild. It was just her private request. She leaned in and warned them the ruins would look nothing like what they pictured, then boldly said she'd found them herself, putting extra weight on every word, while the man stared back, stunned and completely thrown. The boy sorted his thoughts and suddenly wondered if this way of talking had to be Lashisan's doing, like the guild keeps secrets the same way as a guild card, and Lashisan slipped through some loophole to get him this crucial info. The boy shot his hand out and asked her to tell him everything about these ruins, but the girl's face turned grim as she warned him. Monsters lurked there, and deadly traps waited around every corner. The fox girl let out a heavy sigh and admitted she'd tried to go through this place by herself before, but all she could do was bolt, leaving the guy totally stunned. He leaned in and asked, all curious, if she really tested herself to the limit, an archaeologist of all people. Then she grinned, snapped her fist up, laughed, and said that in the end she just trusted her own endurance. She sweet-talked him so hard that he saw no reason to address her so formally, like she wasn't some big shot, and the guy, unable to resist, nodded along with her. Fiani-san flashed a happy grin and swore they'd smash them all using the artifacts, and honestly, that promise lit a fire in everyone's hearts. The fox girl blurted that if she could just get Ria's hairpin, she'd use it. Then Ria snapped into panic, lunged for Kaiti and screamed, "No way, I'm not handing it over to you." She steadies the girl and tells her straight up, even if you want to, you can't. This powerful artifact only belongs to one person. Fiani-san leans in, eyes shining, and admits the hairpin is a fascinating thing to study. The guy hears it and just stares, blown away. The man can't stop thinking Ria's hairpin might be some kind of artifact, and he digs at every question. Its limits, its rules, what it really is, while the girl clings to him, glaring and pouting like she's totally offended. He blurts out to Fiani-san, so every artifact has personal authentication, and she answers, nah, only the really powerful ones can even try, but high-class artifacts. They recognize their owner from the day they're born, no one else can claim them. Curious leans in and asks the girl what rank Ria's hairpin is. Fiona-san smirks and says it'll take a careful study to pin down the exact rank, but from every magical tool she's ever seen, that little hairpin is the most flawless of them all. The fox girl grins and swears that hairpin is pure magic, then Ria jolts and looks up in shock. Still riding that good mood, she blurts that her hairpin is ridiculously amazing, and the whole vibe lifts instantly. Fiani-san leans in, laughs, and fully backs her up, making the guy grin because he can see Ria's got something incredible, and the mystery keeps getting thicker. He strides up to Fiona and blurts out, "What would you pay me with if I dared to explore your ruins?" Fiona pauses, then smirks. He can haul out every artifact, but he has to stay long enough to roam the ruins for at least 3 days. He blinked in shock, a little baffled, and asked straight up if it was normal to get deal-making conditions that good. The girl flashes a smile and says there's no problem. She just wants to study the object itself, because honestly, she can barely analyze artifacts anyway, so she doesn't need those things. He pauses, then it hits him. She's not studying artifactology at all, she's straight up into archaeology, and he can't believe she can even break down artifacts that well. He admits he's clueless about these ruins and begs her to walk him through everything, and the girl grins, saying she'll explain plenty as they go. The fox girl snapped her head away and swore she hadn't gotten a single secret from the guild this time, so she couldn't do it. The boy suddenly figured it out. This had to be a loophole Lashisan was using. Kita starts to worry she can't hand over anything without permission, but if this is a private investigation, nobody can really rein him in, especially when the secrets he pulls from those ruins don't break the confidentiality rule. Honestly, it feels like a win-win. He's going to come out way better than she ever will. The boy clicks. This deal means one thing. He has to keep Fiani safe as they storm the ruins, and Kita, fired up and stubborn, demands, "So when are we leaving?" The girl lifts her index finger, grins at him, and says that the moment they're ready, they go. He says it's way too sudden, and Fiani-san shoots back with a confident grin, better to end it right away. The girl snaps her gaze away and mutters that, if they're right, they can still push all of this off for another 10 years. The guy snaps to the fact that this is another weird phenomenon, like a bomb that's flowing but has no timer. Then Ria whips her head toward the girl in shock and he blurts, "We've got to move right now." 3 heroes stride along a waterfall-side path, forest closing in around them, and they push deeper toward a massive cave. The girl beams and yells that they've finally arrived, while the man studies the cave and says it looks just like a real hot spring. The fox girl, though, can't hide her exhaustion as a shaky sigh slips out, a little worried. Kita leans in and asks Ria if anything feels off. Ria pauses, thinking hard, then admits she's sensing a bunch of magical instruments inside, but she swallows her nerves and insists none of them are big. He's sure that even if there are magical artifacts in there, they're probably already shattered, and his best bet is to assume the place is rigged with traps made from magical gear. The man fires off a question to Fiona, "So what's the plan?" and she answers that he's got the best protection of all of them, and when Rhea bounces around like a live wire yelling Kaidi's name, trust instantly clicks into place. The man admits they might be right, and Fiona's grin lights up as she slips a magical artifact into the boy's hand. The man squints at it, suspicious and curious, and blurts out, "So what magical instrument are you?" The girl wraps her arms around Rhea from behind, grins wide, and promises she'll tail them, ready for the adventure to kick off, and the fox girl chips in that he'll set every trap along the road to keep them safe. Fiona lets out a light laugh and swears this is the whole plan: hang back, then shoot the boy forward, and Kaido stares at her, dread and confusion twisting in his eyes as he finally realizes he's being shoved ahead alone. The boys planted themselves before the cave, and the whole air crackled with anticipation. The boy glanced at the girls, and the girls stared back with wide-eyed curiosity and blazing excitement. Kita stared at his brand-new magical tool and felt like it was built for one thing: setting traps right on cue, and he couldn't shake the question. Does that girl know how insanely tough his defenses are, or did she just hand him something rare and mind-blowing? The boy clocked it. This tool could snatch his owner back from a fatal blow, but only once, and right then he understood the terrifying truth. The girl didn't want to protect him at all. She was counting on him to take the fatal damage. With a shaky, nervous smile, she stared at him, and the moment he figured it out, her secret finally caught up. Keita shoots Fiona a raised eyebrow look and demands she tell him if she's got any techniques or artifacts that can disarm those traps. Fiona just sighs and admits she has nothing, and Rhea stares at her in total shock, stunned beyond words. Suddenly, the girl grins ear to ear, squeezes her fists tight, and blurts that the guild has told her all about his crazy accomplishments, like she's openly impressed. The fox girl's glowing eyes lock onto the boy as she promises everything will be okay, and Rhea fires up the same reassurance to Kaide, but the boy just shuts his mouth, while dread and uncertainty crash closer and closer. The boy clenches his lips and thinks they're not just compatible, they're basically the same kind of magic. Then he decides he's got healing power, and there's no way he's letting Rhea and Fiani-san take another step forward. After all the arguing, the guy finally caves and agrees, we'll do it. Rhea and Fiani-san explode into joy, cheering that they're on board too, and suddenly the whole atmosphere feels bright and hopeful. Rhea suddenly freezes, gasps, and blurts out that a magical trap is sitting on the left side, but Kite's totally safe, and the guy immediately fires back, asking what safe even means. With a heavy sigh, the man shuts his eyes and says, just avoid her. Then, bam, his foot hits a hidden switch and it clicks like something just answered back. He stares at it in disbelief, then it hits him. This isn't magic at all, it's a real physical switch. Suddenly, Rhea blared Keed's name across the room, loud enough to snap the moment in half. Right now, a deadly shooting mechanism snaps into action and fires an arrow straight at him, but he doesn't clock it, not yet. The arrow slams into his cloak, skids off like it hit stone, and won't pierce a thing, then it ricochets away. The girls stare in total shock, fear freezing their faces as they can't make sense of what just happened. Kaida whips around and stares at the closest arrow, shock hitting her instantly. He blurts to the girl that it was just a misfire, and she shrugs like, no way, are you even hurt? Then she gapes at how irrationally tough he's being, but he just grins and tells her he already figured it all out. Rhea shoots her friend a guilty look, apologizes, and blurts out that it wasn't magic, so that's why she couldn't sense it. The guy grins and reassures her, saying she shouldn't stress because he's totally fine. He spots both magical and physical traps, and the physical one barely packs a punch, which makes Kaidi think they're baiting them to drop their guard. He leans in and stares at that hand, then activates his magic analysis to figure out what kinds of traps are circling them. With a flick of his magic, he hurls it ahead, and before their eyes, hidden traps snap into existence everywhere, shocking everyone. The girls just stare, stunned. He grimaces and blurts that with all these traps, he might as well smack them with magic and trigger the whole mess at once. Then Fiani gives a shaky, nervous smile and says, that's actually a great idea. The guy reaches out with Rhea, hurls a spell, and the instant it lands, every trap erupts into explosions, turning the sky into pure, screaming chaos. Kita steadies her breath and asks Rhea to sniff out the magical traps, where they are and how many. Then Rhea nods and drops the shocker. One trap is right beside him. Disappointment hits as he blurts out that he can't see them, because once he can't spot the traps, he knows he'll never be able to analyze them. Fiona swears the magical traps are usually tucked away so well she can spot a few, but this time she can't find a single one, and that uncertainty slams the tension sky high for their whole adventure. The girls beamed at each other, and Fiona, grinning wide, told Rhea she was incredible. Rhea only cracked up at that, while the guy watching them realized he'd better rely on Rhea to spot magical traps. He blurts out what he should do to knock out the magic traps, and the girls spin around. Rhea grins and tells him to just step on her. The girl promises him she and Fiona will show up because these traps can slam the path shut, and if he wants to avoid stepping on them, he's going to have to dodge every single one with deadly precision. With a little doubt in his gut, the man turns to Fiona and asks what's going on in her head, then pushes further. What would happen if he actually stepped on that magical trap? The girl lets out a heavy sigh and says it all hinges on the trap type. Some can summon monsters, others can call down rain, and more besides. Fiona chimes in that the last time she was here, most traps didn't hurt her with brute force, they just guzzled her stamina, and that sends Coyote into real worry. Fionna's face turns stone cold as she warns them to steer clear, but Rhea won't back down. She insists you should just step right on them. He decides to trust Rhea, and instantly realizes she's got way more magic knowledge than he ever does. Kita, nerves buzzing, agrees to try stepping onto that magic trap at least once, and the girls stare at him like he just pulled off the impossible. The boy raises his leg, ready to stomp straight into a possible trap, and the girls instantly catch it, backing away fast because the tension in the air feels deadly. He snorted through clenched nerves, bracing himself with full caution for something truly catastrophic. He snapped his foot onto the magical trap and gritted his teeth, waiting for the moment it all erupted, rattling, hissing, and kicking off the chaos. Rhea, Fiona, and the boy stared ahead in confusion. Nothing happened at all. He blurted out why the whole thing went silent, and Rhea snapped back that she was right. Fiona just looked off to the side, trying to wrap her head around what had actually gone wrong. Rhea explained that the trap's magic got drained straight by the boy's power. Because the traps were so well hidden, they barely held any energy to begin with. After he blurts out, dumbfounded, "How did you just disappear?" He stares at the damage, horrified that the power he unleashed could shatter everything around him so easily. They pushed deeper down the corridor and spotted a massive wooden door waiting ahead, covered in riddles that practically dared them to solve it. Kita whips around to Fiona and blurts out, "Are we checking inside?" He knows that room could be packed with traps. Fiona tells him these ruins used to be some kind of facility, and she can't imagine anyone setting traps in living spaces, but if this was a military base, then yeah, there could be nasty surprises waiting inside. Staring at the door, he figures it's safe enough that they don't need to rig traps inside, then tells the girls, "Check the inside of the door." They yanked the doors open and slipped inside, only to find a huge, completely empty space stretching out in front of them. They scan the room and the boy blurts, "Pretty right," but the girl snaps back, "No, the pattern's wrong." Then he whips around, staring at her like he just caught something, and asks, "Wait, do you both see it?" "This place is totally empty." Fionna's face turns stone serious as he says whoever was in this room calmly broke out of the institution, so there's nothing left behind, but they might have still planted traps meant to hurt the object. He lets out a heavy sigh and snaps, "Isn't this supposed to be the worst thing?" Like he's already ready to quit, and she shoots him a nervous smile, telling him to stop saying that, trying to lift his spirits before he spirals. She tells the boy, "Look, if traps are waiting in the corridor, then treasure has to be hiding somewhere, and even without the traps, the ruins are still packed with answers." She pushes on that if they dig deep enough to uncover secret doors, they'll pull out discoveries worth a fortune. At first glance, the man swears the ruins look dead and empty, like they're hiding nothing at all, but the Herrera ruins proved that wrong, and he can feel a surprise lurking in the shadows. Kita then turns to the girl and tells her not to worry, because he'll carry out her request without hesitation. The boy asks, "Are we done in this room?" And the girl grins, she'll be back later to dig into the tiny details. Then she tells him, "If you can make these ruins safe, at least we'll have plenty to eat." The guy grins at her and says, "All right, then we're starting by heading straight to the deepest part first." The boys, fueled with pure determination, strode through the cave, soaking in the ancient ruins and laughing as they went, while Fiona knelt with her notebook, scribbling down the key details. He strode down a tight brick corridor, and the girls trailed behind him, staring at every corner like it might hide a secret. The man clocked it instantly. The corridor kept squeezing tighter and tighter, and the girls nodded along, hanging on every word. Fiona even felt the atmosphere shift, yet the ceiling stayed towering high, making the whole mystery feel even bigger. Rhea was roaming the space around her when she suddenly slammed on the brakes, sensing something weird in the dark that she couldn't explain. She snapped her attention to Keed, warned her that weird magic was up ahead, and jabbed her finger right where that strange feeling tugged at her. Fiona blinked in surprise, then couldn't help but marvel at how fast Keed caught on. The boy fired off a question. Was this strange magic any different from the traps they'd faced before? The girl paused, unsure, then said it felt weak, almost harmless, and she asked if he wanted to step on her. Instead of hesitation, she just lifted her fist like a shield for her friend. The girl urged them to slip away together first, ditching him ahead of them. The man clammed up, convinced this was the only way forward, and the guy marched ahead, planted his foot on the voiceover like a declaration, then felt the thrill keep climbing. Rhea felt the shift in the air and exploded, shouting to the boy that the trap had already snapped shut, leaving Fiona stunned at how fast that girl clocked it, because the danger was suddenly crystal clear. Kita finally clocked it. This trap wasn't some easy little snare his magic could wipe out. His stomach dropped and he snapped to the girls, "What kind of trap are they activating?" Right then, everything around them started to rumble and lurch, and the girls and the guy froze in terror, because they had absolutely no clue what was creeping up behind their backs. That thunderous sound snapped their heads around. Fear punched through them, just in time to spot a huge puck racing straight down the tight corridor toward their faces. The boys' fear exploded when that giant puck, towering like a whole corridor, started surging faster and faster. When the girls saw all of it, fear slammed into them, eyes bulging as the danger came barreling closer. Adrenaline hit like a jolt, and they whipped around together, then sprinted to escape as the massive metal puck barreled closer and closer. Fiona snapped at the boy, shouting to know what this was, and when he drew his sword to shield the girls, he muttered that Rhea found it creepy, because it wasn't just physical, it mixed in magic too. The man clocked it instantly. This was the ultimate classic trap, and as he stared at the girls, he bellowed, "Keep running." With her acceleration magic blazing, Kite rockets forward and slips through even more flaming arrow traps, all the arrows screaming through the air around her. He did it to trigger every trap up ahead and eat all the danger himself, so the girls wouldn't get caught. The only thing left in his hands was this massive chunk of metal, and it barreled toward the girls at full speed. The man rockets past Fiona so fast she can't even get a word out before he's already gone. The guy tells the girl he's about to use the metal puck, and right on cue Fiona erupts, screaming, "Doesn't he know that metal can't be destroyed by anything?" The man swung his hand, snapped a spell into the air, and shouted to the girl that he wouldn't let her destroy him. He was going to stop him, no matter what. He slams his shield to the ground, and boom, a massive stone wall erupts up from the earth, built to shut down the danger. The giant metal thing slammed into the stone wall and started shoving through with a deafening roar, so hard the whole wall groaned. The man's mind can't wrap around how that's even possible, and the girls stare in shock, fear crawling up their backs as they watch it happen. With the trap surging forward, it shatters the stone wall with a thunderous roar and keeps blasting toward the boys, speed climbing fast. The hero's face drained of color as terror and helplessness crashed in, and the moment he realized nothing was going his way, the whole plan fell apart. He barks at the girls that they've got no choice, then they tear into a run immediately, eyes wide with fear and tears streaming. Kita whips around, staring at the danger closing in and praying it's just the slope making the puck speed up. Then reality hits. His magic won't be able to stop this anymore. Fear flashes in his eyes as he watches it all spiral, and he realizes every second is getting more deadly. The man snaps to the truth that they're moving way too slow, then, decision made, scoops Fiona into his arms and dashes. Fiona stares in shock, hesitates for a split second, and still he keeps screaming at them to run, no stopping. The guy barks at Rhea to sprint ahead right now, and before she even thinks, she nods and blasts forward at full speed. Fiona, completely flustered and lost, yells at him asking what he's doing. Then the boys suddenly crank the speed even higher, and she lets out a sharp scream as panic slams into her, realizing this is spiraling into something far more dangerous. He realizes they've already covered ground and blurts out to Rhea, and she, thanks to her crazy skills, already shoots ahead to check. Then she calls back that there's a crossroad on the left. The boys crane their necks, and right there, they spot a hidden passage that leads straight into the room on the left. Kita clutches Fiona and asks Rhea if monsters are lurking inside. Rhea says no, not monsters, but then there's something else, and out of the corner of his eye, the man spots something strange. He spotted something on the ceiling that magic couldn't touch, like the perfect trap waiting to snap shut. He snaps that everything reeks of a trap, but he won't keep sprinting either, because both moves are way too dangerous. At that instant, Rhea yells at Kaidi that danger is barreling toward them, and the boy, heart racing, stares in panic at the trap chasing right behind. Fiona tried to speak, but the guy understood her instantly. Then he barked at the girls to step into the room, and right when they were about to crash, they got hit with that split-second jolt and flew right in. Right then, a colossal metal trap screeched through the room, slamming and squeezing a hidden mechanism as it went. The man finally hit the room's floor, still gripping the young girl tight in his arms, while Rhea slid right after him and landed inside with ease. Right behind them, boom, something crashed. A massive metal door slammed shut and the only exit was gone. The boys spun around, panic hitting them hard at the sudden noise. The guy set the girl on her feet and she tried to steady her mind. We're trapped. But before she could finish, he bolted for the door and barked for the girls to stay right where they were. He slams the metal door with everything he's got, blasting it with pressure magic, yet all that shows up are tiny, barely their scuffs. When he realizes nothing's working, he drops his hand, exhales a gut-punching breath, and admits it's ridiculously hard, while the girls stare at him, stunned and clueless, unable to figure out how they're even supposed to escape this mess. Suddenly, Ria's instincts screamed something was off, and then a creepy creak crawled through the air. Fear ripped through her as she blurted to the guy, and the man, alert and sharp, demanded what was going on right then. The fox girl leaned in, eyes wide, staring at the chaos with pure curiosity. The guy clocked something off, whipped his head toward the sound, and froze in a mix of shock and fear. Suddenly, the metal hatch he'd been eyeing swings open, and suspicious metal monstrosities start crawling out like they're alive. A massive metal stone blasts out of the hatch with a thunderous roar, and the boys are left completely clueless about what they're even seeing. And right behind him, huge tracked metal robots kept spilling out of the hatch, one after another, and the moment he saw it, horror hit him hard, because he knew this place was absolutely not safe. When the dust finally cleared, the boys stared at a crazy artifact called the Type 3 Crusher, massive rectangular robots with tracks instead of wheels. Keith's brow knitted tight because he already knew he'd have to throw hands. Then he muttered that these guys looked brutal, and the fear of a dangerous fight was stamped all over his face. After he studied those robots inside and out with his sword held tight, he turned to the girls and snapped that they weren't just machines. They were ancient giants they had to bring down. Suddenly, the robots roared to life and charged straight at the heroes at breakneck speed. Ria shouted that they were closing in, and the boys, terrified by what they'd just seen, started scrambling for their next move, trying to read the chaos before it swallowed them. Still gripping Fiona, the guy rockets away from the robots just a heartbeat before impact, and Ria, along with her friends, shoots up right in time. The boy swears those robots are trying to smash them with their hulking weight, but he spots the catch: they're painfully slow. Kita leans in and asks Ria how much to power up his spear to beat them, and the girl, dead serious, says it'll take about 20 times. The man blurts out the question again in shock, like he never saw her answer coming, and the guy instantly realizes they're going to have to stall for time and come up with something smarter. Kita stares down the robots and barks at Ria to protect Fiona, and the second the order lands, the boy launches forward with acceleration magic, rockets straight at the robots gearing up to strike. The girls shot each other a shocked gasp, then lined in, eyes glued to his moves as sheer determination practically radiated off him. He bares his teeth, convinced that the wizard's sword is totally useless against that brutal, unbreakable metal. He figures it out, aim for the crystal's dead center, right where the robot's eyes are. Then Kaidi swings, slamming his sword straight into that crystal at the heart of the machine. The other robot clocked it and froze for a beat, staring at its opponent, and the guy, already pumped and knowing exactly how to handle them, yelled at the robot to come at him. An ancient mechanism sensed danger and surged toward the guy with a sharp lunge. Then, for some reason, it snapped its course and swung hard to the right. The girls stared in shock at what unfolded before them, and the man smirked. Sure, he couldn't shatter their metal armor, but that didn't mean he couldn't steal their ability to move. Ria's eyes lit up as she grinned at her friend, and Fiona immediately threw in an apology, admitting she couldn't help them at all. The guy snapped his head around, smiled gently, and told the girl, "Don't worry, wasn't that exactly what you needed security for?" He stared those robots down, then snapped his head to the girls and said, "Move now, we're getting out of this room while we still can." Kaida snapped his focus into place, yanked his sword up, and unleashed stone spear magic. Then huge stone cliffs erupted from the ceiling in a heartbeat, locking in as a rock-solid barrier. Thanks to the magic in that guy's hands, the metal door, locked tight, erupted in a shower of sparks, blowing open the way outside, and the guys felt hope slam into them as they realized they actually had a shot to escape this deadly place. Breaking free from her long confinement, Kita lights up and pushes to keep their wild journey going. Ria practically springs to the side, fists up, grinning as she agrees. Fiani trudges behind, worn out and a bit down, but she just doesn't say a word. She whips around to Kairi, totally stunned by the ridiculous powers he's got, and asks how he even has the nerve to pull them off. With a small grin, he shrugs it off like it's nothing, because of course he's a traveler. And while Ria stays a step ahead, she spots something fascinating and gasps, her eyes filling with pure admiration. The girl crouches, grabs a strange stone from the dirt, and sparkling with excitement tells the boy, "I found a magic one." The man stares at her right then, eyes locked on the mystery she uncovered. He stared at the stone, convinced it was the energy source behind those freaky machines, and then he offered to carry them off so he could study them up close. The boys stride back down those familiar corridors again, pushing forward with hope blazing in their hearts. Suddenly, the guy spots something and twists his face in shock before scrambling to record it, his fear spilling out. Ria sees it too and just freezes, stunned stiff in place. He points at the mountain of wreckage and warns, "Trust me, this mess is coming and it's about to hit hard." His mind reels, could this have been the room from before? They're clearly marching down the hallway, yet something feels wrong. Maybe those mysterious machines wrecked it. Ria stares at the rubble and broken remains, then nods hard like she's seeing the truth with her own eyes. Suddenly, the boy hears his girlfriend's tearful voice, whips around, and his eyes instantly fill with worry. He spotted Fiona on the floor, shaking with sobs, tears streaming down her face, when she choked out the truth. The precious documents they'd been talking about were shattered beyond repair, and there was no way to restore them. The girl exploded in outrage and screamed, demanding to know why the creators would set a trap that obliterates their own building, and she couldn't stop wondering what the trap maker was even trying to accomplish, while the guy just let out a heavy sigh and admitted he was asking the exact same thing. Suddenly, Ria creeps up behind him and calls out his name, worried to her core. He spins around fast and asks what's wrong, like he already knows danger is in the air. She tells him to shift something buried under a pile of trash, and he freezes at what he just heard. Then he snaps into action and agrees to help. The girl drags him right up to that huge chunk of metal that nearly wiped them out earlier, and the boy stares at it, eyes sparkling with excitement, but threaded with contempt as the whole nightmare comes rushing back. He leans in and carefully asks his girlfriend if she wants him to move it, but she's like, "Why would you do that? There's nothing valuable here." Then she smirks, points straight at the ground, and says, "Check underneath, you'll see." The guy, stunned, snaps his head to the side and pinpoints exactly where it's staring from, eyeing that massive chunk of metal. After a brief pause, the guy clicks, maybe he should try ripping it off, and once the job's finished, he wipes his forehead with his sleeve, and the girl gasps in pure, joyful amazement at what she sees. She beams and points at the giant sword smashed under all that heavy metal, and the guy who never saw it coming just stands there, completely frozen in shock. The boy goes wide-eyed at the discovery. Ria, desperate to make her friend happy, grabs for the sword and swears she'll bring it to him. But she can't raise the sword. Once she gauges her strength, she realizes it's just too heavy to lift. The girl whips around, brow furrowed, and tells Kaidi, "Yep, you're seriously heavy." Then Kaidi shoots his arm out, eager as anything, saying, "Let me help, watch what I can do." The boy hoists that massive sword like it's weightless, completely stunned at how easy it feels, while the girl stares at him, blown away, eyes wide with awe at his strength and surprising finesse. With the sword hoisted high, the boy insists, "I can handle it," but the truth hits hard. That blade is a brutal weight. Then Fiona spots them, gasps, and stares at him in total confusion, amazed he can lift it like it's nothing. The guy blurts out in shock, totally thrown by her reaction, and the girl stammers back that it's a gravity sword, only to admit she has no clue where it even came from. The man demands it again because he can't believe what he just heard. The other guy, stuck on his girlfriend's words, starts to suspect there's a hidden effect at play, something that makes the sword hit with that insane weight, and now he's dying to inspect it. As he closely inspects the sword, it clicks. This isn't just any blade, it's gravity-amped and ridiculously powerful, and when he swings it downward, it hammers gravity to accelerate. The guy, totally baffled, blurts out the same question about gravity's acceleration. Because his mind is racing so hard, he already thinks this power will let him fight with pure force. Meanwhile, Ria, standing behind him, lines in and digs for answers. Fiona blurts out, awestruck, that the blade must be insanely powerful if he can even lift it, because she's never heard of a sword like that, and the fact that anyone can carry something this heavy still makes her stare in disbelief. She's thinking hard, then blurts out that only a handful of travelers managed to lift it, but they already brought their own weapons, so they didn't need this sword at all. The guy studies the blade and shoots back, dead confident, "Got it, I understand everything." Once he snaps back to his senses, the man blurts out, "So, are we really gonna need that sword for more research? It's a huge deal, an artifact worth studying." The girl shrugs and says, "It's not that rare, so grab it if you want." And the guy immediately agrees, taking it without hesitation. Fiani flashes a huge grin and says they've finally squeezed enough research out of today. Now it's time to sprint back to safety. Just as he was finally tasting adventure, the hours slipped by before he even noticed. And when the girl confessed she needed someone to trigger every trap, she promised she'd go digging through those mysterious ruins a little later. Strolling through that endless corridor, she practically trips over her own excitement as she blurts that today has been non-stop. And somehow, for the first time in ages, everything's actually fallen into place, so she grins wide and admits she had way more fun than she expected. Right out of nowhere, Fiani steps onto the machinery, and the whole place erupts into a violent rumble, like the floor is trying to throw her off. Ria blurts out a gasp, half pure shock, half wild excitement, as adrenaline floods her veins. The boys suddenly felt it, something was about to blow up, and they whipped their heads around, panic rising as they finally grasped just how serious this was. Keita, voice heavy with exhaustion, snaps her head toward Fiona, who, realizing they're stuck here for good, blurts out an apology and admits she accidentally hit the wrong thing. Suddenly, the trap snapped shut, and from above something crashed into the corridor with a thunderous bang and flying sparks. So right on instinct, the guy threw himself in front of the girls, taking every brutal hit meant for them. The boy reluctantly remembers it. These exact ancient mechanisms are the ones they'll have to face today, and he feels it hit him. A brand new chance to strike is coming. He shrugs like, it's those robots again, clearly sick of fighting them nonstop while she hangs her head, ears drooping with guilt, eyes brimming with regret, and rushes to apologize, because she knows her actions kicked off this whole dangerous chain of events. Kita flashes a gentle smile and tells him, it's all fine. Now Kita's got one more decision to make, because just like before, the next move is a choice he can't ignore. Staring at the robots, he realizes the hard truth. This cramped space won't let him dive back into their crystals the way he did before. Ria freezes for a second, inspiration hitting like lightning, and then she blurts that the boy should try her brand new sword, hope spilling from her voice, while the boy stares at her, totally shocked by her sudden boldness. He loved the idea, grabbed his brand new weapon with pure determination, and once the sword was in his hands, he agreed to test it, his excitement bursting wider with every second. The cars jerked to life out of nowhere and barreled straight at them, their loud, clanking mechanisms growling like something with teeth. Not even once did the danger cross his mind. He bolted out of there, gripping his brand new weapon like it was life itself, and the girls just watched, eyes locked on him, praying he'd pull it off. The boy stared at the sword in shock, and then, what? It didn't weigh him down at all. That ridiculous lightness had to come from some enchantment glowing on the blade, so he squared his shoulders and pulled in every ounce of strength and confidence he had. He leapt high into the sky, raising his sword at the metal robots, betting everything that the full wrecking power of this two-handed blade would finally explode the instant he came down with the decisive swing. The man swings his blade with everything he's got, carving through the robots as adrenaline crashes through his veins. Kita is stunned, because she never expected him to hit that hard. The boy finally saw it. This sword wasn't just another magic weapon, it was a wrecking ball of power, and now it didn't just fill him with joy, it flooded him with ironclad confidence in what he could do. With one brutal smash, the robots splinter into scrap, and crushing power blasts down in every direction, metal ruins and chunks of land tearing off and flying apart left and right. Sparks flew and ancient machine parts scattered, and the girls froze, staring in terror, mouths wide, like they couldn't possibly believe what they were seeing. Those guys grin like they just won the lottery, and with pure confidence they brag, I like this sword even more than before, and now it's really mine. After a wild run from Tofu, the guys finally rolled back to that cozy estate, kicked their feet up, and sank into the table with steaming hot tea in hand. Fiona's ears shot up and her tail thumped as she sent pure good vibes their way, thanking the boys for the job they'd done and brushing every worry aside. Then she leaned in with bright optimism and suggested they talk about what's next. Ria swings around to the guy and demands, is it done? He tilts his head like he's weighing every word, then admits it's not finished yet, while making it clear their real mission is to dig up what caused the artifact's destruction. Kita swivels toward Fiona across from her, and with a little sarcastic bite, quips that it's a shame she can't do anything about earthquakes. The girl grins and shuts her eyes, then blurts that the ruins have nothing to do with the earthquake, and when she drops that bombshell, the guy stares at her in bitter disappointment, because he'd been praying she'd say the exact opposite. The guy looks totally thrown off and asks the girl if their research was all for nothing, but Fiona just grins and shoots that down, telling him they didn't waste a second. Then she turns to the man and asks if he's even heard of Raidonkos. Kita doesn't know who they're talking about, so he frowns and blurts out that he's never heard that name, asking if it's even a person. The fox girl lifts a finger, tilts her head, and tells him it's true. The guy's name is Raidomkos Van Ortian. The guy stares at her in shock, and memories start snapping into place. He remembers here only nobles carry family names, and then he spots that the man's initials hide Orthian, the city name itself. The boy turns to the girl and asks if this guy is the lord of that territory, while in his head he insists it'd be disrespectful to talk to him without the proper honors. Fiani flashes a grin and pins the guy down. This isn't the ruler's name at all, it's just the successor S, and in this city they don't exactly speak kindly about him. With that frown and a shaky smile, he finally clocks it. Every single person seems to hate him. The girl says it was about a month ago, right when Forzel Sama, the current ruler, jetted abroad. Fiona keeps her eyes on the ground and says Radonkos clawed his way into the lord's seat, then started squeezing huge taxes out of everyone for no reason. After that, he raids ordinary people's shops, takes whatever he wants, and even wipes out innocent folks on bogus charges, because in his world he does whatever he pleases, with no consequences at all. Kita freezes in shock as the boy blurts, why have I turned into a criminal for killing innocent people yet? Fiona answers without blinking. In their world, those deaths are settled by duel, so society doesn't label it as a crime. He remembers a woman once telling him that even if someone slays their rival in a duel, it won't count as a crime. At least, that's the common sense of this world. He finally snaps back to his senses and grills the girl. Wait, how are you tied to earthquakes? She leans in and says the truth. The one who ordered the guild to keep quiet about the earthquake is Donkos. And the moment he hears that name, he's completely stunned. Fiona admits it's just her opinion, but she's convinced he's the one who shut down the earthquake investigation, and then she drops a bombshell. He's been embezzling tax money, crushing Liv's even more, and that includes hers. He finally clicks with what she meant about the next move, and he basically says, yeah, I get it, but then he pushes for one thing. He wants her to tell him herself exactly what she wants him to do with that person. She hesitates, palms pressed to her chest, and blurts that she wants him to beat her. She gives a small, honest smile and admits, right to his face, that she'd truly be happy if he killed him. He stares at her, reading her real intentions in an instant, and then he clocks it. Her clenched hands are trembling like she's trying to hold it all together. Kaida shuts her eyes, and suddenly she can feel the heavy resentment and dark hatred lurking right under the surface. He whips around and demands, how is that supposed to work? If I kill him, won't I turn into a criminal? She snaps back, yes, you'll be one, and then admits the real reason. This man constantly sneers at people from the lower classes and then slaughters them in duels, acting like that cruelty is justified. The boy clocked it instantly and blurted, that means I can cash in my title as an E-rank adventurer. The girl caught the idea just as fast and nodded along without hesitation. The boy realizes everyone here thinks rank is strength, and deep down he knows there's probably nobody else out there like him still stuck at E-rank. He finally clocks it, the one who crushes everyone with brutal taxes and the one behind the wrecked artifacts are the same person, and he figures it's time to drag him out of power, but the man drops his gaze, swallowed by plans for what he'll do next. He whips his head toward Fiona and demands a little time to think, and she grins, happily giving it to him. Kita strolls through the city with Ria, replaying Fiani's demand to wipe out the Lord's deputy in his mind. He doesn't sense a lie, but he still needs to double-check the truth before he commits. He reckons it's smarter to hit the city, track down the details, and meet the person face to face. But the second he thinks it through, he realizes he doesn't even know what they look like. Suddenly his eyes get snagged by a wild commotion in the city, and when he swivels around, he spots a chubby, loud-mouthed man causing a ruckus. With a defiant glare, he snaps that he thought the man kneeling there was holding a bag of money, and the guy clutching it sneers back that if he ever got the chance, he'd make him hand over his taxes. Kita was totally thrown off. He never thought he'd run into Donko this close, and he couldn't believe how easy it was to spot him. Kita studied the scene for a split second, then snapped. This loud guy in the street was the very same person who'd mentioned Fiona before. The boy caught a glimpse of a poor man already trembling with pure terror at Donkos' brutal demands, and Kita snapped to the man beside him, asking what was going on, only to hear the guy warn, "Are you a traveler? Then stay far away from this mess." The man kept talking, saying Donkos always pulls the same move. He hunts his target down, then slams their taxes up 10 times overnight, and if they can't cough it up, he grabs their property and sweeps everything clean, leaving them with their shops gone for good. The stranger slams down a hard warning, don't you dare try to stop Donkos, because if he senses you're weaker, he'll twist things against you with a pile of accusations, and then bam, a duel to the death ignites. He admits that tons of people died because of him, because they couldn't stand his behavior and stepped in, and then, still stuck in his own head, the guy finally snaps out, locks eyes with Domkos, and realizes, yeah, he really is a bad person, just like he heard earlier. Kita finally clocked it, those rumors about him being tied to the artifact's destruction were probably true after all. The stranger, clearly rattled, kept ranting that he needed Forzel's Sama back ASAP because he'd had enough of this nightmare. Then right in the middle of it, someone in the crowd jumped in and demanded, so what were you just talking about? Damko's straight-up contempt on his face, went off on the commoners for daring to call him a bad man, then cut him off instantly and demanded, without a shred of patience, whether he was ready to face the consequences of those reckless words. Before anyone could answer, he yanked off his glove and roared at his men to take it. Damkos tilts his head with pure arrogance, raises his hand, and declares he's challenging that insolent man to a duel. Then, like a switch flips, the moment he realizes what's coming, fear crushes him as his doom hits at once, while Kita watches with sharp caution. The boy still remembers that man warning him to keep his distance, or he'd get dragged straight into dirty business. The stranger, totally lost, blurts out his question, and the man just shrugs, swearing with full confidence that nobody out there really wants to die. Radomko keeps hammering the point, pay me several times more and I'll do you a favor, then I'll wipe this whole mess clean. But the man's eyes bulge with terror and he blurts out he can't, he doesn't have that kind of money. Kida's anger starts to flare as he watches everything unfold, then right behind him, Ria's quiet voice cuts through the air. He whips around and there she is, her eyes brimming with tears, telling him, "You smell unbelievably bad." The whole city burst into laughter the moment they heard it, like one big trigger got pulled. Kita couldn't help it either, smiling mockingly, while Raydonkos cringed, blushed, and then snapped, rage and fury swelling up inside him. The grown man insisted it had a noble scent and didn't reek at all. Then he decided to kick off his duel by going straight for the little girl, but Kita snapped to action and tripped him up before he could reach her. The man hits the ground screaming and Ria has already slipped behind him, clearly panicking, while the whole city starts spiraling. People worry, people fear, and they can't stop wondering what just happened to him. He's thinking, I'm not even good at role-playing games, and then he tells himself there's no point changing it now, so he snaps that the perfume smells awful, but insists it's definitely not coming from his own body. Kita lifts the man's glove with his sword, won't even touch it with his hands, and with a furious glare snaps out that this word is Raydonkos. Ria didn't get why her friend talked like that, then she blurted, "Where'd your cloak go?" And the guy smirked, "I took it off so I look weaker and won't draw unwanted suspicion." Kaeda snapped back, "Don't come here now, things are getting dangerous fast." Right out of nowhere, Fiona bursts in, surprise on her face as she demands what's going on. Kita lights up and flicks the man's glove aside in a hurry, while Ria just stands there, staring, stunned. He whips around to Fiona and tells her she's right on time, then urges her to keep Ria safe, says that clearly she understands the rest and that she already has the answer. With a huge, relieved smile, the girl nods and says she's in, ready to help him tackle this brutal situation. Raydonkos shot to his feet and started roaring with curses, yelling that he'd finally done it, his words snapping the air tight with tension, while Kaida, totally lost, just spun her head around, utterly confused. With pure determination blazing in his eyes, the boy jabbed his finger at his temple and demanded, "So, you want to fight me?" Right then, he was already convinced Raydomkos, spoiled and trashy, couldn't possibly do anything real to him, and he smirked, saying Raydomkos wouldn't be able to beat the strongest E-rank adventurer. The second Raydamko heard it, a wicked little smirk crawled onto his face like he'd already cooked up something sinister. The man barked in a defiant voice, telling the people staring at him that if they chose to stand up to him, he'd show them exactly what that choice cost. He thrusts his fist up and declares he's challenging Keed to a duel right here, right now. Keed's opponent just stands there, tense with anticipation, and mutters that everything's still going perfectly fine for now. Raydamkos jabs a finger at a soldier and declares he'll be the second in this duel. Then the man snaps back that he gets it, while Kaeda just steps aside and watches the showdown unfold. The guard just let out a weary sigh at the chaos, and then, right when everything felt hopeless, Keed snapped to attention, gasping like she just remembered the one thing that could flip the whole outcome. He suddenly clocked it, this was the same terrifying guy he'd just been talking to. The man snapped to a stop the moment he realized this guy knew all about his powers, way past D-rank, and the guard just froze, head bowed, completely lost. Kaida, terrified he'd probably end the duel, snatches Raydamko's attention, and the moment the man notices the stare, he whirls around and eyes him with sharp, intrigued interest. Kita flashed a shaky smile and nodded hard like that meant, "All right, I'm ready to throw down." The crowd surged toward the guard, hungry for his answer, but the guy froze, hesitating, reading the moment like it could bite. He slams his right hand to his chest and shouts that he's a witness to the duel. Kita instantly feels the hate people carry for Raydomkos, and it only cranks his rage higher. He swears that if he wins, Raydomkos has to rip back every tax hike, so the guy nods without hesitation and then flips it. If he wins, he'll seize every last thing Kate owns. With grit in his voice, the man declares this bet is pointless, because he's going to win no matter what. The guy pushes him again, asking if quitting is really out of the question, and Raydomkos snaps back that only one thing matters, victory. With his head bowed, Raydomkos swore that after he crushes him, he'll finally go after the commoner and the girl who stuck by his side. Kaida's face twisted into a frown when he learned his closest people were hit, but even with that crushing worry hanging over him, he still stepped forward to duel. The second guard snaps his arm up to signal the duel's start and barks at everyone to get ready right now. Raydomkos snaps into his fighting stance, ready to strike, yet the hero just stares back with pure distrust. Kaida narrows her eyes and scowls hard as the man tells him he'll let him say goodbye. With an angry glare and rock-solid confidence, the man announces he's a C-rank traveler and dares the boy to entertain him. The second he heard it, fear slammed him. Kita knew he'd been treating that match like everything, and she definitely didn't expect his opponent to be C-rank. Suddenly, Redonko snapped up on his feet, didn't even wait, and charged straight at the guy, ready to spark a duel. The man whips his sword in a blur, ready to land the strike, then his opponent darts faster, slipping away just in time. Kaidi swings without hesitation and lands a brutal, bone-jolting punch on the enemy. The man wheezes in pain, stunned by the surprise hit, and the boy realizes the C-rank traveler he knows is way stronger than him. The man gets slammed back several meters when the guy hits him, and you can tell he never saw that kind of pressure coming. With one vicious hit, Kaidi's sword spits and shatters, splitting cleanly in two. The boy snatches up his shattered sword in stunned disbelief, convinced Dover and Sama's blade must have cracked too, then realizes that, somehow, the only decent thing he had was the gear itself. Redonkos tries to shake off the hit, but the moment he goes to stand, his body just won't obey anymore. With a pained groan tearing out of him, the man screams to everyone that he thinks he just wrecked his bones. Suddenly, the whole city population snapped to a stop and stared at the half-sitting man, humiliation hanging in the air as the ridicule hit. In the blink of an eye, the crowd erupted in one loud roar, everyone shouting for Keed to finish what he started. With his head down, the boy trudged up to the man and started to say, if he wasn't wrong, those were the winning conditions, but right then Redonko's loud, panicked hiccups exploded, and every townsperson shot their hands up in pure joy, cheering the boy's victory. Terrified for his life, the man shot his hand out and begged him, take every coin I've got, just don't lay a finger on me. Kita clocked it, this guy was basically begging for his life at the exact moment everything looked dead and buried, and he knew it was the perfect opening to squeeze answers out of him, so he demanded to know why he dared to steal information from the guild. The man sprawled on the ground, gapes at the boy in terror and blurts that he was ordered to do it, right when Kaido rockets in and demands, who exactly gave you that order? With his life slipping away, the man can't hold it in. He starts pouring his heart out, spinning a fierce tale about a man called John Doe, claiming he's part of the new Fire of Doom generation, and that John was the spark behind the whole scheme to steal the money. Hearing about this mystery gang for the first time, Kaida stares at the guy in sly confusion and demands, wait, are you serious? That's really the name. Redonkos, swallowed by his memories, blurts out with real fear that the people he's talking about aren't small at all. This is a huge, deadly organization that's convinced every single artifact is pure evil. With terror in their eyes, they keep talking, how his brother had taken first place with their father and he never even noticed. Redomkos is convinced the artifacts are to blame, so he knows this group is doing the right thing, while Kita can only think that it was his own fault all along. The boy can't sit still with curiosity, so he presses the man for anything else he knows about the organization, only to get a blunt shrug because the man says he can't add anything specific, and then reveals Redonkos told him to trust him. Kaida starts to believe the man is telling the truth, and as soon as the prince rides off, everything feels like it's shifting, because these shadowy organizations aren't just watching anymore, they're tugging at the prince to use him for their own games. After hearing all of it, Kaida's chest went heavy, no sympathy left, just rage creeping up as he raised his broken sword and gave Redamkos a final farewell. Out of nowhere, someone in the crowd yells Keed's name, wait, and right at that deadly second, the boy, just a hair from his opponent's face, freezes. Behind them, right at the front of the crowd, an agitated, bearded man in armor stands like he owns the place. Kita clenches his shattered sword and whips his head around, staring at the man behind him. Redonkos keeps looking forward, stunned and utterly lost, because he never expected to see this face again after so long. Out of nowhere, Redomkos erupts with a loud, emotional shout. He claims this man is his father, and the poor guy's eyes go wide, excitement crashing into real fear as he realizes this can't be good. One of the guards, following ancient tradition, slams his chest with his right hand and bellows, Zulsama, a thunderous sign of honor that makes it crystal clear how much he respects her power and standing. Kita, still buzzing with the tension, whips his head over his shoulder, staring at the man in shock, because he's no pretender, he's the real prince who vanished for the capital. When he hears how wrecked the city and its people are, he finally realizes the prince is back, so Forzel locks eyes with him, thrusts his hand forward, and firmly asks the boy to drop his sword, because Redonkos can't be allowed to die in some duel. With pure nerves and fearless trust, the man blurts to his father, will you save me? Kaid then strides up to the king and lays it out. For their duel, victory means only one thing, the opponent has to die. Then he presses harder, but if we win without those conditions, does it even count? Forcel Sama shoots back that if winning means getting the enemy killed, then you follow those rules straight up. But he isn't saying you have to end a life, Kaida is the one who has to. Suddenly, on the king's command, a guard yanks a huge square artifact from his gear, packed with mysterious symbols that feel like they're telling 100 secrets at once. Kita stared at the object, and when she realized it was a magical device that revealed your status, her curiosity shot through the roof. The guard doesn't waste a second. He shoves the attribute to Raydomkos, who's still sitting on the ground, and pure excitement crashes over him. He freezes, not because he's scared, but because he can't wrap his head around what's happening and where this could lead. Right as the magic attribute touches the man's chest, a blinding light erupts from the mechanism, proof it's finally working, and that sudden spark instantly triggers panic. Out of nowhere, the booming word bandit blasts onto the magic device, and Raydomkos and Kita are left utterly stunned, because they never saw this wild twist coming. The guard snaps that the boy is guilty. Cold as ice, Raydomko erupts, shouting it's a lie, and the man's father shuts his eyes, breathing out in sharp disappointment at his son. The man starts begging and swearing to his father that he's done nothing wrong, but the prince explodes, furious and crushed, shouting at him that if he truly hadn't done anything wrong, then he wouldn't be in this mess. Forzel, voice roaring with rage, storms up and demands the man tell him where Matumkos is, because he refuses to let this happen, and he'll never stand by and watch. Raydomkos tries to defend himself, snapping that his little brother was unbearable, always bossing him around, so he locked him up, insisting it's the most natural thing to do and that there's nothing wrong with it. In the middle of that terrifying moment, the whole city stared in silent horror. Kita shot the man a look of pure contempt, and she thought, this is an assault, this is robbing people of their freedom. The boy couldn't believe the man really thought this was normal. Then Fortzel-sama slapped a hand to his forehead and snapped that his son was terrible. Raydomkos stared at him, dread snapping into place as he realized what was coming next. Forzel's voice dripped with disappointment as he said the man would now be executed as a bandit, with the sentence carried out cold and merciless. The prince snapped that if the young man had just acted like a normal person, he could have lived in peace. Then Raydomkos asked again, trembling with horror and fear. The guards swoop in and haul him off as a criminal, and in pure panic he yells at his father to stop it, begging for some kind of mercy, while the prince turns to Katie, apologizing for every single headache and worry he brought her. The prince admits every bit of this was his fault, swears he'll lift the restrictions right now, and orders the guild to blast the truth to the public immediately. Then he turns and offers the boy another heartfelt apology. Kaida meets the man's eyes and realizes with total clarity that he's carrying himself with ruthless professionalism, even if he's the one who's suffered the most in all of this. The guy finally slipped his coat back on, snapping into his old look again. Then, out of nowhere, Rhea and Fiona burst over the horizon with warm smiles, praising him like he just crushed it. Fiani's voice trembles with sincerity as she blurts that she never thought she'd see Forzel-sama here, and she's relieved it's finally all settled. Kita just smirks and tells her that as long as this man runs the city, everything's going to be okay. The guy clocked that serious shift in her expression and told her straight up, the artifact trouble isn't fixed yet, so keep your eyes open from here on out. He urged the girls to head straight back to the guild, grinning like he'd just unlocked the truth. Turns out the info restriction had finally been lifted. He was so sure Lashisan would spill everything, and the girls lit up and agreed without a second thought. They finally hit their destination, and right on the stand, something caught the boy's eye, so hard they just gaped as the other residents froze too, staring in total disbelief. Fiani stared at the news and said, they already posted it, how did they move that fast? Then the guy shot back, yeah, everything's happening at lightning speed. He realized the news had just dropped minutes ago, and he couldn't stop himself from staring in shock at how fast everything was spiraling around them. Kiita spun around and caught Lashisan chatting with the girl, and when she felt his eyes on her, she turned with a warm smile, setting his heart on fire from that very moment. He shot a nervous smile over his shoulder, wondering if she'd really started getting ready the second the duel kicked off, because right then, Fiani had just settled into the Lasta, grinning like she'd won, and lifted her hand to greet him. Kita clocked that this girl was pure skill and could swing everything in the future, and that realization lit a spark in his chest and filled him with real confidence. The reports coming in from near Orshianome said the monsters had started acting wildly and out of character, and people were whispering that it all traced back to smashed artifacts, because right after that, earthquakes started spiking, and the locals couldn't help but panic, living every day on edge. But there's a strong chance those artifacts are jamming the volcano's eruption, because even now there are still zero clear signs it's about to come to life. The artifact got smashed by the new generation of the Fire of Doom, an organization that hunts them with everything they've got. But the investigation is still rolling, and by tomorrow morning, fresh clues could drop that flips everything on its head. While he reads the info, he realizes that the destroyed artifact he and Rhea found is the thing holding the volcanic eruption back, and when it was smashed, it triggered the earthquake. Fiona snapped her gaze to the guy and said, "We've said enough, listen up. We've got to track down the rest of the artifacts and stop them from being destroyed, no matter what it costs." And once he heard his friend's words, he nodded and agreed without hesitation. Then the girl, chin in her hand, mulls it over and asks if they should check out the great ruins of Orion, yet she secretly doubts there'll be anything useful waiting there. He stares at his friend, shocked, and blurts out, "Why do you think that?" "Because hey, research can always throw surprises at you." Fiani rubs her temples like she's weighing every word, then says she's heard about the ruins they found earlier, and compared to this, the great ruins of Orthian are from a whole different era. She keeps talking, insisting there are tons of theories about these ruins, but her gut says they're from a totally different civilization. Kaeta and Ria Lenin hanging on every word because they can't miss it anymore. They understood everything. He drops his gaze and realizes, if every word of this is real, then they've got zero leads on where the rest of the artifacts are, and that thought hits him hard. The man stares at Ria, baffled. How has this new crew of the Fire of Death not sniffed out the rest of the artifacts yet, when their destruction is basically just waiting around the corner? Suddenly, Ria spots something shocking and snaps her gaze away in pure surprise. They were just a couple meters from the crowd when, right on cue, a fresh wave of people stormed up to the newsstand, hungry for the latest happenings. The boy whips his head toward the girl, asking if she can track the artifact's location even if the entrance isn't sealed, and Ria grins, totally sure she can handle it without breaking a sweat. Fiani, totally lost, blurts out, "Wait, what are you talking about?" Kita, talking about those underground ruins, leads the way to a mysterious artifact locked behind a seal that magic can't touch, and she's sure it won't stay closed for long. Fiani gapes at the guy in shock and blurts out, "Why would you choose that?" not yet realizing just how brutally serious his reasons really are. He explains that an organization will track down the remaining artifacts, and then they'll have to spend real time destroying them. Plus, he claims it'd be simple if he and Ria just noticed the shift in magical power. Ria shoots back that it won't be easy at all, because those artifacts are built tough, strong, and nearly indestructible. He thrusts out his hand and tells them, "If you're already wiping us out, then grab this chance to turn the tables." The man jabs his finger at the crowd near the notice and insists that everyone above ground will definitely tip off their comrades underground. Then he turns and challenges, "So you girls don't think so?" The girls couldn't believe a word they heard, staring at the guy with their mouths hanging open. Fiona beams and says this means they'll finally break the seal, and Ria lights up right along with her. Then the guy, seeing how thrilled they are, grins and agrees. The girl's right, and they'll be able to pinpoint their location fast. The guy hammers his fist into his palm and growls with pure determination that the moment they figure this out, they're gonna crush this chaos for good, and suddenly their mission feels bigger than ever. Right then, a huge smile lights up his face, screaming hope for a brighter future.